What's going on, guys? We are live with episode number 9 of the Club and Stuff podcast. We're going to be going over UFC 251 tonight. We are joined once again by a special guest, Joe Suntszu. Joe, welcome aboard. Luke, before we go through the rest of the introduction, you want to just shout out Squares and Sharps real quick?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. I recently partnered with a sports betting lifestyle apparel brand, Squares and Sharps. They donate 1% of all proceeds to charity. They got some pretty solid merch on there, guys. You can use my promo code SWR2020 for 15% off your whole order and free shipping as well. That's squaresandsharps.com. We're also running a giveaway right now, too, via my Twitter for some pretty sick flip-flops. All you got to do is like and retweet the tweet, follow myself and Squares and Sharps, and then let me know who you guys are picking for all 3 title fights in the comment below. That tweet is pinned on my profile as well. So once again, guys, check out squaresandsharps.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. So, yeah, as usual, I'm your host, John Stargarian MMA. You can find me on Twitter at MMAFawkes. That's FAWKES. I really have to get that handle changed. I'm here with Luke. It's at SWR_betting. Lags, that Lags _ the capper. C's at CHanson10. And Quinn, who's at Orthodox1993. So we're just going to run through this whole card. Could be a bit of a megapod tonight. Pretty exciting. I think all of us have a fair amount of action out there. First up, not really one that's going to get the juices flowing, but I guess it's in the position it belongs on this card. We got Martin Day out of Hawaii fighting Davy Grant. Joe, I know you had some narrative here. You want to take us through this first?
Yeah, I mean, look, Martin Day, his last 3 fights have been postponed. 2 of them, one of them due to COVID, the most recent one, but 2 of them due to injuries to himself. I haven't actually dug too deep into the extent of the injury. So essentially we're looking at a fighter coming off of an 18-month or so layoff, a split decision loss to a Chinese fighter. Interestingly enough, though, I don't know if you guys knew this, he was credited with 100 significant strikes in that fight.
I saw that.
One takedown and 2 sub attempts. So I know we're not talking DraftKings here, but that is like a DraftKings kind of day that you want for a guy who loses because you're definitely going to get some points there for that. So that was kind of interesting. Again, knowing how Fight Metric scores, though, I'd have to watch the fight again to see if he really landed 100 significant strikes. I'm not sure how he actually lost that fight. All words coming out of camp for Martin Day is that he is in great shape, that he's used the 18 months. He's a Hawaiian fighter. He's 3 years younger than Davy Grant, who's been in the UFC for a long time. Davy Grant will likely try to take him down, although it's a small sample size, but Day has got an 86% takedown defense, so that's not horrific. If Grant cannot take Day down and, more importantly, hold him down, I really do think that this could be Day's fight and maybe even finish him late standing because he's clearly a better striker than Davy Grant is. So if he could prevent the takedown, keep the fight standing, and land anywhere near those 100 significant strikes that he landed in his last fight, I could see this being a relatively easy night for Martin Day. With that said, I'm not confident enough to bet it because we do have a fighter coming off of an 18-month layoff, fighting against a middle-of-the-roader or lower-tier fighter, Davy Grant, who at least has been maybe a little bit more active. So I don't have a bet on this, but I would pick Martin Day to win.
Quinn, how about you?
I have no play here. I can't really trust either guy. I mean, Davy Grant's been in the UFC since 2013, and I know he's been plagued with injuries, but it doesn't really seem like he's leveled up his game very much. I can't really trust him to win minutes here. Like, he might land a couple of takedowns, but I don't know if it's going to be enough with what Day's going to do on the feet. On the flip side, Day is pretty, he has 12 professional fights. I'm not gonna throw down minus 200 on Martin Day here no matter what. But I definitely do think
where his line is at right now.
I think that's what he was last time I checked.
Depends on yeah.
So I'm not gonna rush to lay the juice down on that at all. I think if you're gonna bet it, it's probably more of a live betting spot. But I am gonna pick Day just because I think he's gonna be able to land more volume on the feet. So for me, the pick's going to be Day, but I have absolutely no play here.
Yeah, so personally, I don't really have a strong read here. Like, I think Day's the much better boxer, but, to Joe's point, Grant's going to probably try to take him down. His takedown defense seems at least somewhat suspect, and I've seen a couple people mention this week, but, he got KO'd in guard, like out cold by Noeline Hernandez. And Noeline's not really what I call like a classic power striker, so yeah, it's a bit concerning. And I mean, especially considering, if Day has the fight he wants, there's going to be probably a lot of pocket exchanges. And so, like, I don't really, like, I wouldn't play it myself. I know Z talked about it a bit on his show, getting the under, I think it was like plus 130 or something like that.
No, plus 180.
Yeah, so I don't hate that at all. Just, if I thought Grant was a little bit like, if I thought Grant had even like a modicum of power, I think that would be a great number. But I don't hate that. I have no lean myself personally. I'm just going to pick Day, but like, yeah, to Quinn's point, paying big juice for a guy who's pretty unproven and might have a suspect chin doesn't seem like a plus EV move. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I guess I was considering a potential play on Martin Day, and also to what you guys just touched on, I was also looking at the under when I saw that plus 180 number. I thought that was a bit intriguing, and I only say that because I know a couple of you guys touched on that I guess that you think that Davy Grant is going to look to wrestle here. Once again, I don't look into interviews too much, but from the interviews I saw, he's actually happy that he's not going to be fighting a guy who's actively trying to take him down, or at least what he assumes. So from what I've seen, it looks like he's going to want to actually keep this fight on the feet pre-fight. Now that might change as Martin Day starts lighting him up like a Christmas tree. But from at least the narrative from what I've seen is that this is going to be a largely a stand-up fight with both guys trading, which is definitely going to favor Martin Day if that's the case. So no bet for me. That plus 180 that Z hit might look really sharp if Davy Grant decides to stand with him for 15 minutes, because I think Martin Day does have the exponentially better boxing here, as you touched on, John. I think it's also important to note that Martin Day was fighting at flyweight for a large majority of his career and recently moved up. I think the move was good for him because the dude was an absolutely massive flyweight. I kind of put him in that like Holly and Paiva type category, a guy we'll get to a little bit later, at least in terms of size. So really long guy. I think the him not cutting weight anymore is probably the best thing for him here. So I'm picking Martin Day as well, but yeah, I just don't want to lay minus 200 here. I think it might be a bit of a kind of a trap fight in a certain sense where it could play out a lot closer than odds indicate, but I'm picking Martin Day. But like I said, I think this is one that could play out closer than odds indicate.
Lex, how about you?
So this is a complete pass for me. I mean, just based off all the points you guys touched on, and I mean, they're all the right points, I think. So I mean, Grant. My bad. Sorry, Day's coming off of a huge layoff here, and I just can't really trust his durability in this fight. And the same with Grant. So I think that the under is a good look here, but I just don't really. I don't know. I can't really trust either guy to find a finish. I don't know. It's a complete pass. So.
And C, how about you?
Yeah, I'm passing. I don't really have much interest in this.
All right, great. So we move on to the next fight, and this is really the only other fight on the card, I think, where, well, that isn't at least somewhat exciting here, and it's Carol Rosa, Vanessa Melo. Lags, I know you have a play here. You want to go in this first?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty low-level women's MMA fight in general, I think. I mean, both of these girls are coming into their, I believe, second fight. Well, for Melo, it's her third fight, but Rosa's second fight in the UFC. But, I mean, both of these fighters are still pretty green, but I think I can trust Rosa's output here. And I don't really trust Melo to do anything on the feet. She's pretty low output, and I just see her as more of like a walking punching bag. So I'm happy with the price I paid with Rosa. I parlayed her minus 205, and she's getting up to minus 225 right now. So I'm happy with Sylvia so far.
See, you have anything here?
Pass.
Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, so, what actually I'm more interested in the camps that these women train at than the fight itself. Melo trains at Nova União, and when was the last time you heard Nova União, the acclaimed Brazilian camp mentioned? that is a camp that's actually fallen off a cliff post USADA.
Yeah.
Is reduced on THC. What I hear, though, oddly enough, is that it's not that bad a camp for female fighters. Generally less likely to go on THC, maybe. So, Mello trains now. Panatudo, which is where Rosa trains, is not a bad Brazilian camp either. So look, it's a low-level MMA fight. I would lean Rosa, but I mean, winning a split decision against Lara Propicia. I know I said the name wrong. Be a whole lot of confidence. Yeah, I said called her Propicia. That does not instill a whole lot of confidence. So it would be a pass for me. But if you asked for a pick, I'd give you Rosa.
Quinn, how about you?
I have no play here. I don't really have much to say. This is like the only fight that I didn't even tape, to be honest with you. So.
All right. Yeah. Personally, I have no play here. I think Rose is probably going to win. If you were to make a case for Mello, I guess it would be something along the lines of, Rose is obviously very hittable. She's very willing to get in exchanges in the pocket. And while Mello has been beaten pretty soundly twice, the level of competition has been very high in Tracy Cortez and Irene Aldana. So I don't buy that case, but if you were going to make a case for her at the plus 200, I think that's it. So I don't have a play here. I think Rose is going to roll, to be honest. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, John, you pretty much hit it on the head, at least in what I wanted to touch on in terms of Mello. If you were able to give her any credit, losing to Tracy Cortez and Irene Aldana are not bad losses, especially. It's just a tough draw to really draw in your debut. But, when I was doing tape on this one, even before I got to Aldana and Cortez, I was watching some of her regional fights. I was like, man, I'm probably going to bet Rosa here, even without looking at it, just from how shitty she looked. Even
I remember you saying that too.
Despite her wins, but then I went and watched Carol Rosa. I always talk about this in terms of low-level women's MMA, is that volume, pressure, and aggression is usually what wins, and I think that's definitely Carol Rosa's is something that she brings. But my issue then in watching her is she's another girl, as you touched on too, John, who is extremely hittable as well. So I can't lay minus 2-1 on a low-level women's MMA fight that could potentially play closer than odds indicate. I think it's a spot that Mello should definitely roll. But once again, man, it's just one of those greasy fights, I think, that we could see play closer than odds indicate. So, but I do think from a DraftKings perspective, Rosa might be a really solid play. I'm definitely not the DK guy. I definitely go to Suntszu for that advice. But just in terms of volume, I think you can definitely anticipate that she's going to throw a lot. She's shown a pretty decent chin. So for whatever that's worth in terms of my DK advice, but I'd say she might be a nice little sneaky play for DK.
Yeah, I agree. And the shots should be there to land. Joe, what do you think of that?
Yeah, she scored a ton in her last fight on DK. It's a lot of it's recency bias, and she is kind of expensive. But with 13 fights and $1 million up for grabs, she's definitely going to get some ownership.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to win the million and go maybe a big.
And she would probably be one of those fighters that not very many people are on. So that might be another contrarian play you can do on DK to get yourself away from the playing field, so you're not splitting anything.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if this $1 million was not carved up. It's just going to be a matter of how many people are,
you get a lot of title fight exposure out of that.
Yeah, there's you got 3 title fights, and again, let's keep our fingers crossed. We don't know, if hopefully we won't lose any fights, but I will tell you, I just pulled it up. Rosa scored 126 points on DraftKings. That is a massive score. Now, let me tell you this, though. Okay, this is a Fight Metrics special. She got credited with 171 significant strikes. Right? A knockdown and 171 significant strikes. I don't understand. I swear that these Fight Metrics guys, now UFC Metrics, actually play DraftKings because I don't know how you give her that many significant strikes. If any of us absorbed 171 significant unconscious, I mean, so I don't get it. I mean, people are going to look at that. The other thing, though, is she's really expensive on DraftKings. So to Quinn's point, she might actually be underowned simply because she's 9.2K, which makes her the third most expensive fighter on DraftKings, and she's not in a title fight. So it could be a good little contrarian play if you think the guy at Fight Metrics is going to be off the sauce when he actually grades this fight. So
yeah, I need to get in the Fight Metric Discord channel. I don't know who to talk to about that. Anyway, we'll move on. We got a fun fight coming up in the flyweight division here. We got Raulian Paiva taking on, I believe he's a debutant in Zhalgas Zhumagulov. And Luke, you have a play here, right?
Yeah, so I put 3 units on Raulian Paiva at -172. Pretty strong opinion here, actually. In full transparency, Paiva is a guy who I do think has a decent ceiling, but I do think he's another guy that people, I think, are overvaluing just a slight bit. But I did cash a nice play on him over Mark De La Rosa. But I guess my point is that in a guy in Paiva, just with his intangibles of being so long and tall for the division, you just don't see that too often, especially at flyweight. And I think he largely uses that pretty well. The issue is that he can be hittable and stay around in the pocket too long. But then again, it's all based on matchups. And I've heard a lot of narrative, at least towards this Zhumagulov guy, because, he beat Tyson Nam. He beat Tagir Ulanbekov, who was supposed to fight in a couple weeks, but he also pulled out due to the whole Khabib's father passing situation. And then he beat Ali Bagautinov as well. But if you actually go look at those fights, in my opinion, I think Zhumagulov actually lost those last 2 fights. I think he got a little bit of home cooking in Russia a little bit. In my big issue with him is he's definitely a tough guy, but he largely only throws in single shots. He is accurate. He can land takedowns, but I haven't seen a ton of control time either from him. But he's also another guy who can be taken down, can be controlled, is very hittable. And the big thing for me in making this big bet on Paiva here that I noticed through tape, through virtually all of his matchups, he does not do well going backwards at all. He does not. It's when he kind of gets those far side overhooks or whatever, when he throws coming back to try to push a little bit more to the middle or whatever, and that's when he starts landing, because the guy actually is pretty accurate. But in a guy in Paiva who's so long, who uses his range relatively effectively and is accurate as well, who packs a bit of a punch, which we saw against that in that fight against Mark De La Rosa, I think it's really just a nightmare matchup for him. And so that pressure that Paiva is going to bring, I don't think it's going to give Zhumagulov that chance to really do much. And like I said, he's not a high output guy. He's not a big volume guy. He is a tough guy. He will be in there for all 3 rounds. So I'm not saying Paiva is necessarily going to knock him out, but I think Paiva is going to be the guy going forward. He's going to be throwing more. And one more quick point. I've seen Zhumagulov slow down in virtually all of his fights as well when effective pressure is applied. And from what we've seen from Paiva, he's going to apply that effective pressure. So, I've seen a lot of people passing on this, and I don't blame them necessarily, because this dude is a tough guy, but I think people are maybe looking in a little bit too much into the fact that this guy's got a V at the end of his name, so they assume that he's this superstar. But like I said, to me, I think he lost his last 2 fights. I don't think he's anything special. I think Paiva should really roll here. So once again, I put 3 units on Raulian Paiva at -172.
Lex, how about you?
So I guess I'll pick up where Luke was leading off there. I'm not as high on Paiva, I guess, as others, but I think in this matchup he should roll. But I just don't. I think he's very green overall. I like you touched on. I think he keeps his head on the center line way too much. He's way too hittable, and his takedown accuracy is only at 20%. So, and I think his takedowns per 15 minutes is around 0.2. So, I don't know. I just can't really trust laying. I think he's now up to -180, -185. So I just can't really trust that green of a fighter right now. But I'm interested to just watch this fight, but I don't really understand the Zhalgas bets, I guess. I would lean Paiva, though. I think it's a good bet.
C, how about you?
Pass.
All right, Joe, how about you?
Yeah, so I have Paiva in a parlay. Luke made a lot of great points. Like if you just look at his recent wins, you might be impressed by the Kazakhstani fighter known as Zahako. I love that nickname, Zahako. So Zahako has some impressive wins. Tyson Nam, Ali Bagatov. A guy who was on like a 5-fight win streak before he ran into him. So if you don't look closer at the actual fights themselves, you might be a little impressed and figure this guy has been fighting Russians. Generally have less. I hate to kind of keep going back to the whole. I'm really not a drug conspiracist, but it's pretty known that these Russians juice up. So he's actually fighting against these juiced up Russians, and Pavia is a massive 5'8", which is huge for the weight class. So he's got a 3-inch height advantage, over Zahako. And I thought he won his fight against Kai Kara France and was actually on his way to winning that fight against, Boynton before he actually became a bleeder in that fight. So he could theoretically be 3-0 in the UFC. Now, all of Lags' points were great. I mean, he doesn't actually have a lot of head movement, which is going to cost him against someone who actually is a really technical striker. I just don't think that this Zahako is. So there will be a time to perhaps fade him, especially if he ends up having to move up to 135 because he's freakishly tall for 125. If that happens, there might be a fadeable moment. I just don't think this is it. I have Pavia in a parlay.
Quinn, how about you?
So I am on the fading these debuting Russian fighters this week. I'm glad that Joe brought up the USADA points. Like I'm not going to trust any of these fighters on what they're going to look like coming into the cage. Like USADA is no joke, and like we saw with Linz, he's looked like a completely different fighter. So with that being said, doing tape on Zalagas, I don't know how you say his name. I wasn't really impressed. The guy can't really wrestle. His scrambling ability is, he's going to lose a lot of fights in the flyweight division. I mean, his scrambling is not that good. Very, very low volume, like Luke said. So I wasn't really that impressed with him on tape at all. Now going to Paiva, I personally really like Paiva. He's going to fight for your money. He's high volume. He's got pressure. He has decent grappling, especially defensive grappling. I think he has a pretty high ceiling. He's massive for the flyweight division. I too agree with Joe. I did think that he clearly beat Kara France in their fight. I was pretty upset. I'm pretty sure I had a bet on Paiva in that fight as well. Yeah, I think he's going to put the pressure on Zalagas here. I think he's going to out-volume him. I think he's going to maybe land a couple of takedowns here. I wouldn't be surprised if he knocked him out. I mean, he's huge for the flyweight division. He hits pretty damn hard. I didn't play him, though, because he was sitting like around minus 185 all week on my book. And I just think that there is like some better spots on this card that you can play. But I do think that Paiva rolls to a unanimous decision here.
Yeah, so I guess I come down on this fight somewhere near Lags here. I mean, you guys know me. I'm always very, very skeptical about young prospects just in general. But I actually do like Paiva's game. I guess where my skepticism comes in here is like, so look, obviously the De La Rosa performance was very impressive. Like there's no question, he was just ripping him with the counter shot. But like I'm not trying to take anything away from that performance. It was very impressive. The problem is, so first of all, like let's look at that. Mark De La Rosa landed 40. De La Rosa was landing. He landed 45 significant strikes against Paiva across, basically 10 minutes. It's not an insignificant number. Lags, you mentioned he keeps his head pretty much on the center line. He also got taken down twice by Kai Kara France, who, is not the best. He's a good defensive grappler, but I wouldn't really rate his offensive grappling, that highly. Now, and I'm not saying this to kind of shit on Paiva here. It's more, I think, the sample we have him is pretty low. I do like his game. I do like his frame quite a bit, especially for that division, though he probably ends up at 135 long term, I guess. But My issue is like we don't really know fully what he is yet. Like I think he's pretty good, but we have to keep in mind number one, it's flyweight. So it's like yes, he did get he did finish De La Rosa, but De La Rosa, isn't great. And I do think he's got plus power, but I still at 125 pounds wouldn't say like you can count on Paiva to finish this fight at a very high, clip. And so it's like, can Zalgas stay with him? I don't know. To both Luke and Quinn's points, he is low volume, but he will like attempt takedowns. And so it's like, I don't know. I favor Paiva pretty considerably. I just don't favor him enough where I'd be comfortable betting him. Like it feels like one of those fights where, Paiva's probably going to win comfortably, but if he's not hurting him, you never know if those rounds could be close enough, or if Zalgas lands a late takedown, maybe he steals them. So yeah, I'm interested. I'd like to see it play out for 15 minutes again with Paiva and see what improvements he's made. My pick's Paiva, but yeah, it's no play for me.
Hey, John, I just want to point out that Zahuka is the second-ranked flyweight in Central Asia. Just so you know. I mean,
I did not know that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there are only 2 flyweights in Central Asia. He's the second highest ranked flyweight in Central Asia.
So we'll move on here. The next fight we have on the slate. This is a decent one. So it's Marcin Tybura was originally slated to take on Alexander Romanov. Kind of a bummer because I think I was going to play Tybura in that spot. Maxim Grishin instead steps in. Anybody have a play here or no?
Yeah, I have some disappointing narrative. I mean, I was looking forward to my
narrative, Jeff.
Yeah, King Kong Romanov. Anybody who lifts their style foundation as sumo, I want to see that guy fight. If you have watched film on this guy, he literally picks people up and slams them. This guy comes from such a tough country. Right, I wanted to see this guy fight. He's a beast. Obviously,
Moldova, right?
What? Yeah, Moldova, like where the security guard has to walk you to his car and you got to drive him back to the front door. Yeah, it's from like Moldova, right? So I really wanted to see this fight because I wanted to see this guy King Kong fight. I'm not sure what kind of injury he had or if he had visa issues. The narrative I have here is pretty obvious. We've had really a great level of success with PFL fighters coming to the UFC. Right here, we've got another PFL fighter making his debut at heavyweight. Right, he's a natural 205er. He's making his debut at heavyweight. Now, look, he's not giving up much because Tybura is not a huge heavyweight either. I so wanted to fade Tybura. I just can't do it in this spot because I don't see this guy as that good. And all the narrative of these guys coming over from PFL and literally shitting the bed in the UFC. So I don't have a play here, but if you told me you wanted to put something on Tybura, I think this is a spot that he could likely win.
Yeah, I agree. Quinn, how about you?
I'm sorry. Oh, Tybura versus Grisham. I'm sorry. I was totally distracted. So yeah, I actually made quite a bit of money on Grisham and his PFL. I do like his game a lot. He's been around for a long time. He has decent power. There's some red flags though. He's pretty low volume. He can be pretty hittable and he can be taken down and controlled. So I'm kind of like, this fight is weird for me because I'm not impressed with Tybura at all, really. Like, the guy's chin is such a liability. I mean, he's been knocked out in three of his last 5 fights, I believe. Like bad knockouts too. And Grisham does hit hard. I mean, he definitely hits very hard. So I could see Tybura having success with his wrestling here, and controlling him on the mat until he gets knocked out. So I'm definitely leaning Grisham to get the KO here. I just don't know how you can lay any juice or trust Tybura with his recent performances. I mean, the guy's at heavyweight and he's got such a bad chin issue. So, and I'd like to see I'm interested to see how Grisham looks on the scales at heavyweight. I mean, he's pretty physical for 205. So that will be an interesting thing. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Grisham by knockout here. I think he eventually catches Tybura, but I also wouldn't really be surprised if Tybura had success with his grappling here. But I'm going to go with Grisham by KO.
Yeah. How about you, C?
Yeah, I mean, Christian's all right. I'm not like super into this fight. I guess even for DFS purposes, obviously, there's what is it, like 1.2 million up for grabs for first place?
What is it? 1.2?
Like, yeah, I don't know what I saw. Maybe it's just 1 million, but yeah, I just think that it's pretty low volume. Grisham might, win in the first like 4 minutes of this, or it's just going to be like some type of low volume affair, where Tybura might have some success wrestling. But yeah, overall, I don't really have a strong opinion on this.
How about you, Lex?
Pass for me, to be honest. I would just look to fade Tybura here, but I don't know if this is exactly like a good spot to do that. So complete pass for me.
Luke?
So when I saw this fight originally announced, pre-tape, pre-analysis, I was thinking I was going to make a decent bet on Grisham. And then I kind of double backed on it. I mean, I think the interesting thing with Tybura is if you look at his last 4, the 2 wins he had over Stefan Struve and Sergey Spivak, he came in at 245 pounds and looked much better in terms of on the scales. He looked like he was in shape a lot more. He didn't have as big of a gut as he's had prior. And with that as well, he came with wrestling heavy game plans in both of those fights. And then in his most 2 recent losses against Shamil Abdurrahimov and Augusto Sakai, he came in at near the heavyweight limit, didn't really do much of that, looked absolutely terrible. So in terms of Tybura, for me, I think the guy is just like a really big question mark. And so I can't really trust what he's going to do here in this fight. Is he going to come wrestle heavy? I will slightly disagree with Quinn a little bit in terms of Grisham's wrestling, because he did fight Jordan Johnson twice, who's a Division I wrestler from Iowa. And I think in terms of his defensive wrestling in that fight, I think he fared pretty well, considering that Jordan Johnson actually went 4-0 in the UFC and actually got cut. He kind of had the John Fitch effect there. But yeah, but also to Quinn's point too, I mean, the guy is pretty low volume as well, but he does have kind of that like sneaky KO power. He can be really accurate, but yeah, I think this fight's really just the definition of a pass, because I just feel like there's just question marks all over the place. And then we talk about, Grisham moving up to heavyweight now. How does he look at heavyweight? If Tybura comes with at least a wrestling heavy game plan, maybe even if he doesn't get takedowns, is he able to control Grisham in the clinch and just land knees and steal minutes there too? So to me, there's too many questions, but I do think at least at space, I think Grisham is the better fighter. But yeah, not really a confident lean, but I'm going to pick Grisham.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this a bit when this fight came out and Romanov got booted. So my issue is, like, to Joe's point, Grisham's like a light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight. That's never a good sign, but it's a bit concerning considering Tybura can grapple a fair bit. And so I do kind of expect Tybura is going to win minutes here, because Grisham's doesn't have the best volume ever. But at the same time, Tybura has no chin, and Grisham can crack a little bit. And so it's like one of those fights where it's like, I honestly feel like if I bet Tybura, he's getting knocked out pretty quickly. And if I bet Grisham, he's going to attempt like 35 strikes over the course of 15 minutes and just lose a pretty clear 30-27. So, yeah, I have no play here. I guess I'll lean Grisham just because heavyweight fight, Tybura seems to be declining and his chin is clearly going. But yeah, no play for me. So with that, we move on. We go to Leo Santos and Roman Bogotov. And I actually have a play here. I have a half unit on Santos by sub at plus 500. Quinn, I won't take everything off the bone from you here. But basically, my thinking is, I've seen people talk about Bogotov's wrestling this week, and some people I really respect, and I just don't really get it. So, like, if you watch, like, Khabib, Habib's, he does that kind of ankle dive where he basically gets you to back up before he reshoots and kind of presses you to the fence and takes you down from there. Bogatov does that. He does that ankle dive, same thing. The difference is when he reshoots, he doesn't really get you pressed to the fence and take you down. He kind of just reshoots back at your ankles, and it's kind of like lock and load, repeat until he gets you down or you wind up sprawling and taking his back. And it's just like he's going to attempt takedowns, which I do like. Like I appreciate the fact that Bogatov is willing to stick to a game plan, but he's really bad at it. And like I've seen him. It's not just like Quinn messaged me last week and he's like, dude, look at this fucking guy. Like this guy, he's going to get subbed. And I was like, okay, you're showing me one clip. And then I watched like 5 fights. And I was like, every single takedown this guy attempts, he puts himself in danger. Like he literally puts someone on his back almost every fight. And so it's like Santos is a pretty high degree black belt. And so I don't know. I kind of feel like that's at some point in this fight, maybe 2 or 3 times, Santos is going to end up in a dominant position where he could potentially sub him. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my play. I have no real – I mean, other than that, like I think Santos is more skilled and probably should win the fight. But, yeah, I think he's going to have chances to sub him. I think plus 500 is crazy. Quinn, I know you also have a play. How about you?
Yeah, so I was going into this fight like, oh, I'm stoked Leo's back. Like he's one of my favorite fighters. And Bogatov, he's the lightweight M1 global champ. He's going to be good. And then I watched tape, and this guy is just an absolute trash can. I mean, the guy can't strike at all. He like closes his eyes and loops punches to get inside. He doesn't set up his takedown entries at all. He's literally like an ankle grabber, but isn't good at it. He puts himself in really, really bad positions. He puts his neck out there to get guillotined when he's going for takedowns. He loses position while trying to maintain the takedown and gives up his back. I mean, he almost got subbed multiple times by these regional level fighters. I mean, I don't really understand this matchmaking by the UFC. I mean, if you have a guy that you think is going to be a good prospect in Bogatov, why are you going to give him a 4th degree black belt in Leonardo Santos? I mean, skill for skill, Leonardo Santos is levels above this guy. I mean, Leo's been plagued with injuries and he's been having trouble finding fights, but the dude knocked out Kevin Lee. He just knocked out Stevie Ray in a vicious knockout. Like that counter right hook that he threw on Stevie was just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I think that Leo can choke him out. I think he can, if he does get taken down, I think he can choke him out on the ground. I think he can reverse him and get into some dominant positions and choke him out on top. I think he can knock him out cold on the feet. I mean, I just think this is a really, really good fight for Leo here. I mean, I could name like 100 other fighters that you could have given Bogatov to like build him up in the UFC and not give him Leonardo Santos. Like I know Leo's 40 years old and he has some cardio issues, but like the guy looked absolutely fantastic against Ray. I mean, his build looked really good. His striking looked really good. Like he looked really good. So I expect him to come here and I expect him to look good too. Like I said, I don't trust Bogatov's physique. I think that USADA is going to absolutely hammer this dude. So yeah, I have thanks to John, I was able to put 0.8 units on Santos at plus 500 by sub, and I was also able to get Santos at plus 175 for 0.7 units inside the distance, just in case he gets the KO. I mean, if you're playing Bogatov, I mean, you have to play him by decision. I mean, this guy, like, outside of a fluke, like, left hook, like, random knockout, like, he's not going to sub Leonardo Santos. I mean, Santos probably has some of the best credentials in jiu-jitsu wise in the UFC. So I just don't really understand the matchmaking here. And I think we're getting an absolutely fantastic line on Santos by sub here. So that's my take.
Yeah, agreed, Quinn. How about you, Joe?
So I'll play devil's advocate just for the hell of it. Santos has had 3 fights in the last 5 years. He's 40 years old. Technical Tim will tell you that there is a material drop-off in win-loss once you hit 40 years old. And just to put things in perspective, Santos had his first professional mixed martial arts fight 5 years before the release of the first iPhone, right? So, like, we're talking, this guy has been around forever, right? So, also, let's look at his wins. Okay, so I don't think Stevie Ray's that great a fighter. I'm not diminishing it was a beautiful KO, but I don't think Stevie Ray's that good. Look at his prior fight against Martins, okay? He got a split decision against Martins, who then went on to lose 3 fights, including one to Cajun Johnson. So look, I with all that said, I have Santos in a parlay. So you think I'm really pissing on the guy? I'm not. I mean, I just wish this was a guy who was more active.
You're making your case.
Yeah, I'm just saying, look, I mean, I get it. This guy is going to try really hard for takedowns, this Russian, right? He's going to try really hard. Now, if he gets a couple takedowns, even if he has no control, I mean, is that enough to maybe win a round? I don't know, right? So I don't, I like Santos here. There are some factors going against him. I do have him in a parlay. I don't think I would bet him up that much if this line moves, like especially if this goes to 2-1. I would be really concerned about laying 2-1 on this guy. But I do pick him to win. I'm just kind of giving you guys some stats and some precautionary statistics.
Oh no, believe me, Joe. Like the 40-year-old's enough to stop me from actually betting him, or betting him on the money line, I should say. But yeah, I hear you. C, how about you?
Yeah, I played Santos in a parlay. Took him round 1, and then I also stabbed him for half a unit inside the distance.
What'd you get round 1?
I mean, it's unfortunate. I think it's like plus 600. I actually took sub round 1. Might be a little bit more. I have to look. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that Santos has been so inactive. Obviously, his striking kind of came along. The guy's a talent, but yeah, at 40, I mean, anything kind of. What are all these fucking messages? Yeah, I mean, at 40, pretty much any time, fucking father time could come on you. But yeah, I don't really see that here. There might be Bogatov might land some takedowns. Like, I mean, I expect him to. I mean, that's what he does, right? I mean, he's pretty consistent in going for it. But even if he gets a takedown, like he's not passing, he's not really landing any ground and pound. So there's just going to be opportunities for Santos to sub him, even on the feet. I mean, I think Santos still probably has some pop in him. He's just pretty low volume, but yeah, I mean, I'd much rather take Santos inside the distance than just pay like the minus 200 or whatever. So,
and you could even, like, if you want to go real degen here, you could play the under 1.5 at plus 250. Like honestly.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, so this actually is closing out my parlay with Rissa. So I have her and Santos parlayed for plus 125, and then I have a half unit on inside the distance at plus 175, similar to you guys. So, I mean, you guys pretty much touched on all the points. I guess I'll leave it to if Bogatov, if he's, after spamming all these takedowns, if he doesn't land any takedowns, since Santos has an 86% takedown defense, I think he's going to light him up on the feet. So, like Quinn said, I think that under 1.5, that might be a sneaky good play. But I don't really like Bogatov at all. I mean, I don't really rate him very highly. So I think it's definitely Santos or pass, I think, if you're betting on this fight.
Yeah, I agree. Luke, do you have any opinion on this fight?
So I actually just moved in on a play on this fight this afternoon. I put 1 unit on the under 2.5 rounds at plus 150. The only reason I did not bet Santos inside the distance, because apparently Santos inside the distance is actually at plus 150 right now as well. So I think I might give myself a little bit of an extra out just in case, Bogatov decides to pull something out. But my big reasoning here is, I mean, you guys pretty much hit on everything, so I won't go into it. But at least in terms of Santos real quick, which is really what concerns me, which is why I stayed away from him straight. is that even if you go back and watch like the Norman Park fight, the Efrain Escudero fight, those fights that went 3 rounds, he gassed really, really bad in all of those fights. He ultimately, I believe there was a draw against Norman Park, and then he beat Efrain. But the only reason he really beat Efrain was because Efrain gassed actually more than he did. So granted, that was, I think, 5 or 6 years ago now. But now, once again, you guys bring up the whole 40-year-old Brazilian narrative. The last time I bet on a 40-year-old Brazilian and Fabricio Verdum, that didn't go over so well. So, there is, I think that whole drop-off point is real. So, at like that minus 175, minus 185 range, I don't like it. But real quick, in terms of Bogatov, that you touched on really well, Quinn, in terms of his takedowns, one thing I really noticed in tape is outside of his double legs, when he goes for those snap down singles, if he's not able to get it right away and opponents are able to shut him off, he'll go straight down to their calf and he'll tuck his guy in Santos, who's 4th degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's getting his back taken there every single time he does that. I guarantee it 100%. And even when he does land those double legs, and I know he's got a bunch of submissions. I think he even has one Bravo choke on his record too. Like, bro, he's not getting these Bravo chokes. He's not getting these arm triangles on a guy like Leonardo Santos at all. Like, he's not just going to sit there and pass his guard and do a Sarah McMahon type gimmick. Like, it's just not happening here. And then in terms of on the feet, real quick, in Santos, like, I know the guy's relatively low output, but like you said, the dude's got 86% takedown defense. He strikes, or his striking defense is pretty high. I don't have the number right in front of me right now, but I know it's pretty good. His accuracy, I believe, is also over 50%. So the dude's just kind of got that sneak KO sniper power as well. So, like, and with Bogatov, real quick too, like, the dude is not a good striker at all. Like, that guy is a walking KO waiting to happen. And while this fight's on the feet, it's going to be super dangerous for him. And then, assuming he decides to go grapple heavy, because he has in every single one of his fights, he's playing right into the hands of Leonardo Santos here. So at plus 150 for an under, usually I'm trying to look at least both fighters having a viable path to finish. But I think the finish rate for Santos on the feet and on the ground here is so high, I'm kind of willing to overstep that, I guess, barrier I've put on myself a little bit here. I don't see this going a full 3 rounds. I see this guy making mistakes on the feet. I see him making mistakes on the ground, and I think Leonardo Santos finishes him.
One more point too, like with Bogatov, like he has like no jiu-jitsu. Like when he lands these takedowns, he doesn't really pass. Like, and he's not going to pass Leo's guard. Like, there's no way he's passing Leo's guard. Like, Leo does not. I don't think he's allowed a single grappling advance in the UFC. And like, so what's Bogatov going to do? Just lay there and guard and try to control him there? He's going to get subbed doing that. So
yeah, I mean, I will say this. Like, contrary point, like, is basically like I do think the Santos sub happens a fair bit more than what the line implies. Like, I think it's a pretty high percentage outcome. But, if it doesn't happen, like, Bogatov could win the fight just basically by spamming takedowns. Like, would anybody really be shocked at that if Bogatov just lands like 8 takedowns and kind of like edges a greasy decision that way? Like, I agree he's not going to pass him, but if he is in guard, positionally sound enough, it's not totally insane to think he could, just kind of lay and pray the fight. I do think Santos is going to have the opportunity to submit him now. I'll say that. But anyway, we move on. We're still on the undercard here. We're going to go to Makwan and Mirkani, the cockiest motherfucker in the world, Mr. Finland, against Danny Henry. Anybody have a bet here?
Yeah, I do.
All right, Luke, hit me with it.
Yeah, so I'm a piece of shit. I got in on this one early. I bet the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 125 or plus 135. That completely flipped to about minus 150. Listen, I'm not a guy who's normally going to hit openers. I know I have in a few of these other couple fights in recent weeks, but when they just royally mess up these lines, like I just have to take them. I gotta take them. I gotta take them. Like, I'm not gonna apologize for it when the line sits there and moves 80 cents within fucking 24 hours. It's like, it's just a massive fuck up.
Wait, Luke, what number did you say you had?
What's that?
What number did you say you had?
I believe plus 135 or plus 125.
On Makwan?
No, on the fight doesn't go to decision.
Oh, sorry. I like this. I was like, what? That's a
no. No, so I guess my big narrative here is like obviously Americani, if we want to talk about him, I believe the guy's 5-2 in the UFC. He's largely a winner. He's fought some pretty solid guys, but we've seen a consistent pattern in Makwan Americani throughout his UFC career. And that's he's got a really strong first round and he is gassed in that second and third round. But now to his point, I will give him credit in the sense that I consider him like an effective gasser, kind of like how I call like a Frank Camacho, a guy who is still going to, be active in those latter rounds despite being tired. It's not that he's like completely shot where he can't do anything anymore. But yeah, like I said, man, he's got one round in him. He stole that first round from Shane Burgos that we saw recently too. But in a guy in Danny Henry, we've seen him knock out a few guys. We've seen him have some crafty chokes at times too. We've seen Americani actually have some sneaky power at times. Like he's not a guy who's going to throw in volume. Like I said, he gasses, so largely throwing one shot, but he does have a little bit of sting on the end of those punches when they land. And so does Henry as well. So to me, when I saw that plus 135 number next to this fight, I honestly see both guys having potential to get finishes in terms of striking, and I see both guys having potential paths to victory in terms of submission here, especially when Americani gets tired. Danny Henry's a pretty long guy. He's definitely not some world-class BJJ guy, but, he can wrap your neck up really quick if you don't respect that at all. And so, if this fight does get out of the first rounds, even with my under 2.5, or I'm sorry, the fight doesn't go to decision, I'm not going to be sweating too hard because Americani consistently makes mistakes in these latter parts of these fights, which is really going to open up paths to victory for Danny Henry here. So, maybe it's one of those fights where we just see a crazy amount of action on the feet, a crazy amount of action on the ground, and it goes all 3 rounds and I eat my bet. And honestly, this is one of those fights where I'm fine with losing it because I know there's going to be a shitload of action in this fight with all guys having passed to victory here. So I'm really happy with my bet at 1.5 units at plus 135. The fight doesn't go to decision.
How about you, Legs?
Yeah, similar to Luke's opinion. I like the under 2.5 here. I just couldn't pull the trigger. I actually wanted plus money, but I think it's sitting now like minus 115. So I just passed, but that's my lean. So if I get any dog money on that, that's the take. But till then, just pass.
See?
I played Americani round 1 sub in a parlay with Santos round 1 sub. I think he's got a pretty significant grappling edge here. The concern, more or less in all of his fights is really his gas tank. That seems to go to shit nearly every fight. So don't really understand how, you can't figure that out at this point. But I think, I don't think, Henry on the mat, is going to provide him as much resistance as some of the other people that he's faced recently. I'm happy for, round 1 sub. I just, it's pretty constant to go for takedowns, land them, and then his grappling should be a little bit above where Henry is at. I'm cool with the round 1 sub. I think it's like plus 450 or something.
Joe, how about you?
A little bit of narrative on this fight. Shout out to Newsom. Newsom's MMA. Apparently, in his last fight, Mr. Finland was seriously ill in his dressing room and did not let on because he did not want the fight to get canceled. He was so ill that he actually had to spend several days in the hospital after the fight. Now, that's a fight that he had a really impressive first round against Shane Burgos. And just kind of like, again, he did a Marquand, he did a Mr. Finland and he gassed out. But there is actually some narrative around this last fight. First of all, I've never wanted to go to Finland until I've seen this guy's topology photo. It's pretty amazing. Like, my coffee maker actually comes from Finland. Only thing I knew about Finland was they made really good coffee makers. So there's a little bit of narrative there. Henry, on the other hand, right, if you look at his first 2 fights in the UFC, he was a fairly significant underdog to, Tamor 2.0 and Hakeem Dawodudu. You know, he won those at like plus 200, plus 160. Then he runs into Dan Ige, and he's friggin' even money against Dan Ige. And of course, you know, Dan Ige does what Dan Ige's been doing and kind of finishes him relatively quickly. So, I mean, I don't know if we've seen a ceiling, maybe. I do expect, as he said, that, you know, we're going to see takedowns. He's got a distinct grappling advantage. I can't pull the trigger at minus 200. But I do, you know, I see this fight as a lot closer because if he does gas, the longer the fight goes, I see the advantage shifting over. So I like, I guess, as a pick, I like Mr. Finland, but I'm not super confident.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Joe. How about you, Quinn? Any strong opinion here?
I completely agree with Joe. I mean, I like Amir Khani. I think he has a pretty big grappling advantage in the first round. Obviously, just, you know, his gas tank. So if he doesn't get that sub, like, it could get really hairy for him. Like, Danny could take over, but I've never really been that high on Danny. I love your bet, Luke. I think that under 2.5 at plus 115 is an absolutely fantastic bet, and I think you're going to catch that for sure. So yeah, I like Amir Khani. I'm not in the business of betting people with gas tank issues unless your name is Leo Santos. So yeah, I'm not going to lay minus 200 on him. I do love that under 1.5. I mean under 2.5 rounds prop. I think that's a fantastic play. I might actually play that myself. But yeah, I think Amir Khani is going to get him down and just work him on the mat and find a choke here. So my play is Amir Khani first round sub.
Yeah, so I have no play. I'm kind of happy the line's coming back in from Amir Khani minus 220. Luke and I touched on it a bit yesterday, but I was like, man, if this goes out any further, I'm gonna have to play Danny Henry just to like keep the book honest here. Like, I do think Amir Khani has a fairly significant skill edge, but I mean, the guy gasses like a heavyweight whenever he expends any kind of energy. Like, you can, like, I do think he's going to win this fight. I actually do like the first round sub bet. Like, I think he's going to put Henry in some really precarious positions early. But like, what's interesting, it could be one of the better live bets of the weekend, to be honest with you. Because like, if he puts Henry in like serious danger, and you start to see, you know, him hit that gas tank cliff, you know, you could probably get Henry after round one with the +3, +400 range. But yeah, I can't trust somebody who's been. Like, I bet Burgos. I parlayed him against Amir Khani last time, and about 3 minutes in, I was like, I'm just going to put a bullet in my head. Like, it was such a dumb bet, and then it just went. And so it's like, I can't trust that. I think Amir Khani should, while he has energy, should dominate this fight. I think first round sub bet's a good bet. Frankly, my prediction is going to be first round sub because I think he's going to, you know, one of the things, like I mentioned this a lot, like Amir Khani is gonna follow what his best path to victory is. He's gonna come out. He's not gonna screw around, like just trade hands with Danny Henry. He's gonna go out there. He's gonna look to grapple, get the fight down, and attack submissions. And so yeah, well, he might try a flying knee right off the bat, but other than that, he's gonna do that. So yeah, Amir Khani first round sub was my pick, but yeah, I think look out. Like, if this fight hits the 6-7 minute mark and he's slowing, I think Henry is a live bet. It's pretty interesting. Next up, got a good one here. We have Jiri Prochazka and Volkan Ozdemir. I am on Volkan here for 2 units minus 160. Bottom line is Jiri doesn't check kicks. He does seem to throw decent volume, but you know, he keeps his chin right up in the air. And like, you look at his fights in Rizin, it's not like he's just going out there. Like, he's fighting mostly old dudes. But it's not like he's just going out there and crushing these old dudes, just like wiping them out. Like, he's going out there and being competitive with basically all of them until he finishes them. And so it's like, that's a bit concerning. It's like, yeah, Fabio Maldonado was okay back in the day, same as Stevie Dalloway, but those guys, you know, he shouldn't be taking any strikes from those guys these days, really. You look at the one real high-level fighter he fought over there, or at least guy high level who was like not washed, was Nemkov. And that was Nemkov at like 23, not even Nemkov now. And he basically got his brains beaten in for 10 minutes, but it was a 10-minute round and Nemkov couldn't make it to the stool. I basically just think Yuri will throw high volume. He does some explosive stuff. Like he'll throw crazy knees. He'll throw crazy kicks. He's live for a wild finish here. But Volkan's obscenely durable. He's a better boxer. Yuri's chin is there to be hit. And Volkan, I think I heard it today, he threw like 40 kicks in his last fight against Rakic. Volkan's, he's going to split decision with Rakic and Reyes. Like the guy is fighting, the best light heavyweights in the world and being competitive. Whereas Yuri is being competitive with guys who are 40 and whose best days were in the steroid era of the UFC. Yeah, I think Volkan should be a pretty substantial favorite in this fight. I kind of think he's playable up to about -200, but that's my own personal opinion. Quinn, I know you have a play here as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have 1.5 units on Volkan at -150. I was very happy to get that line because I believe it was Saturday. He was like -185, -190 on my book, and I was just like, fuck, I'm not gonna be able to play this guy. And then the line just dropped so quick the next day to -150. So before even taping it, I just stabbed that, and I'm really glad I did after taping it because Yuri, he's fought in Ryzen, he's fought his last 4 fights are against washed up light heavyweights in CB Dalloway, Fabio Maldonado, King Mo, and Brandon Halsey. Dalloway was actually having quite a bit of success, landing on him, and especially with the leg kicks before he got knocked out. King Mo took a round off of him. Halsey, yeah, and he actually he beat him the first time.
3 or 4 years ago.
And Brandon Halsey, he actually landed 2 takedowns on him in the first round and took his back and almost finished him both times. And then he literally just gassed and quit, completely quit. Same with King Mo in the second fight. King Mo just completely quit. It was the Brandon Halsey fight was really, really weird, honestly. And then, so he's cut, so he's the I believe he's the light heavyweight champion, Ryzen. So he's coming over here to the UFC, and it's another USADA thing. I don't trust his physique there. I don't like his level of competition there. And then you're going to give him a guy in Volkan Ozdemir, who in my opinion is top 5, top 10 light heavyweight in the world. The guy is absolutely fantastic. I mean, he has much better boxing. He has a significant wrestling advantage here. He's got a really good gas tank. He has one. I mean, I'm sorry, he does not have a great gas tank, but he has one hell of a chin. He's going to fight for your money. I love betting on this guy. And I just think he is just a much better fighter than Yuri anywhere. And you could have given, just like with Bogatov, you could have given Yuri so many light heavyweights to build this guy up, but you give him Volkan Ozdemir, who is a legit gatekeeper. I think Ozdemir runs through him here. I mean, I think he can wrestle him whenever he wants, really. I think, but I ultimately do think he catches him here. And knocks him out probably late. I mean, that's another point that I want to make too. Is Yuri, he takes a while to get going. I remember when I was doing tape, the two of the 5 fights that I watched, it took him almost a full 4 minutes to get his striking going, and that's just not something that you want to do against a guy like Volkan, who is just going to come out at you like a bat out of hell. So, yeah, I think we're getting pretty good value here on Volkan. At -150, and obviously it is because he's now -185. So, yeah, let's ride.
I agree completely, Quinn. Joe, how about you? Any thoughts here?
Line makes absolutely no sense. I don't know how Ozdemir is not 7-2 or -350. So this guy Jerry has beaten 3 guys that could play ghosts in Dickens' Next Christmas Play. I mean, the ghost at CB Dalloway. I mean, who has this guy actually fought? Juiced up issues aside, which I'm glad Quinn made the point. I don't understand this line at all. I would argue to you that Ozdemir actually beat Reyes. He won that fight. I'm sorry. It was a bad decision.
I disagree strongly.
Oh, no. I mean, he won that fight. I don't know what the judges saw in that fight. But anyway, that's fine. We can talk about that another time. I don't understand this line at all. I don't understand the matchmaking. I have not yet. Of course, I didn't catch the early line on Ozdemir because I was looking at other things, but I am planning on betting him. I may try to get creative now because the line is, what are we at now? -170.
Well, you can get him. So minus. So from Jersey Books, I mean, Bet365 has 172. FanDuel had 160 earlier.
It's not bad at all.
Dimes has 160 right now.
I may look for a finish because I know it's not his MO typically, but I could see him getting finished by Amir.
But I mean, 160 is not bad. I really don't think so here.
I don't understand the line at all.
Yeah.
What's the under? What's the under, real quick?
I would have capped it.
It's 1.5 at it was 1.5 at like plus 115 last time I looked.
What's the two? Do they have a 2.5 out line out?
I don't have.
Plus 125 on DraftKings. Under 1.5.
For 2.5?
Yeah.
Oh no, 1.5.
Under 2.5 is minus 159.
I almost like the over, to be honest with you. Like Volkan is super durable, to be honest. And like the inside the distance line, I think for the fight to end in it is like minus. I think it's like minus 200, something like that, which I don't really agree with at all. Like I kind of think Volkan's power might be a bit overrated, to be honest with you. But C, do you have anything here? Any reads, any plays?
Yeah, I played Vulcan for 3.5 units at like a mixture of like 150 and 160. Yeah, I mean you guys pretty much touched on it. Doesn't check leg kicks, big concern. Defensively, honestly, I think even above leg kicks, just in general, defensively, he's just keeps his hands low. His chin's there to be hit. I do agree on the fact that like Vulcan probably doesn't hit like a truck. So I actually have a little bit on the 1.5 over. I don't really think Vulcan's pretty durable himself, so like I don't really see him getting finished inside of 7.5 minutes. I actually don't mind it going to a decision. I'm not sure what that line is, but
it's actually
Vulcan by decision is plus 375.
Yeah, that's not bad. I think if it hits the scorecards, he's probably winning.
Well, they owe him one at least. Haha, John. They owe him one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Plus 375 by decision? Are you kidding me?
Vulcan by decision, that's 375.
What?
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add there is I don't know if I would be able to trust Jiri's durability just based off these guys he's fighting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the only reason I guess why I'm passing. I'm similar. Sorry to butt in on you. See, I'm similar on you guys. I like Vulcan. I like Vulcan, but I just don't really. I mean, I don't know. I just think this is a crazy fight. It's going to be high paced, a lot of action. So
Yeah.
at the current line for me, I just can't lay a lot of chalk on this.
Yeah, I don't know if Jiri has as big of power as people are making it seem.
Yeah.
It's also another thing that I'm kind of just factoring in on my side when I was looking at it. I'm not really sure that he's as heavy of a hitter as people are making it seem. I mean, he does swing, but I don't know. It'll be a good test. I mean, Vulcan's extremely durable just in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so definitely not to play contrarian here, but I honestly don't want any part of this fight personally. So I'm not making a strong case for Yuri necessarily. I guess my big thing is that just because he's been starching these guys, I know, and you guys made a lot of good points as well, where he has had, even in a lot of those wins, there's been certain stumbles along the way in terms of, you brought up King Mo, Halsey, and I believe even when he fought that Swedish guy like Albrechtsen, actually stole the first round from him via wrestling as well. I think he got like 3 or 4 minutes of top time on him. I don't know, man. This is just kind of one of those dicey fights where I don't necessarily want to discount Yuri because of what I guess he's done so far in Rising. You guys touched on it, pretty much everything in terms of him, beating relatively over-the-hill guys, and Ozdemir fighting some of the best guys in the UFC. So at minus 150, I definitely get the logic for a bet there, but I don't know. I think this Yuri guy, he's kind of a little unorthodox in the sense of his movement patterns. Like I said, he does keep his hands down, which is definitely not the greatest thing to do against a guy in Ozdemir who has like nasty ass hooks. who we've seen put out a lot of guys, more so at least earlier in the part of his career. But, I also think in terms of Yuri real quick, I think he does throw from kind of unorthodox angles. Like I said, his movement patterns are a little different. So I'm curious to see how Volkan picks up on that and reads on that. And, I think there's a case to be made, logically that this fight goes under. But I mean, you guys brought up too the fact with Volkan's like durability too, and we haven't really seen Yuri go super long as well. So that's definitely why I'm not backing him, even at plus money. As a guy who's coming into the UFC who has been battle tested, but to me, ultimately, there's still just too many question marks in this fight. So I don't hate the bet on Ozdemir necessarily, but I personally want no part of the fight.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So with that, we move on to main card. Got a fun one here.
What about
Hold up, John? We missed Salikov and Zaleski.
Yeah.
Oh, did we? I'm in UFC stats here. It's not even. Oh no!
All right, you miss out. ESPN.
All right.
John. Man.
All right.
So get over it.
Yeah, John is excited because I have visual aids.
I am excited. All right. So before we get to the good stuff, we got Zaleski dos Santos, Muslim Salikov. C, I will let you start with this.
Yeah, I played Muslim for 2 units. Yeah, I think in general the fight. I know a lot of people are on like the under. It makes sense. Yeah, dos Santos. He needs to grapple to win, in my opinion. I know a lot of people. I guess talk about the volume of dos Santos, but in general, just Muslim's like a really good defensive striker. Just like on the feet defensively, avoids getting hurt. In general, he's got like really good sense of distance management. Yeah. And dos Santos is, he kind of throws volume, but just in general, like Muslim is gonna like decrease your volume just because of like his counter and power game. Plus, on top of that, like dos Santos, he tends to get into like some exchanges where he's just really just throwing wild hooks. And for someone like Muslim, he's just probably going to get knocked out in those scenarios. Like Muslim's a very intelligent striker. I guess the counter argument to playing Muslim is like, what if dos Santos gets it to the mat, which is pretty fair. There's not a whole lot of footage, I guess, of him and his guard, but it's meh. If dos Santos is wrestling and spamming takedowns, yeah, sure. On the feet, though, I just think Muslim has a pretty significant advantage. Even though he throws low volume, still.
Yeah, he outlanded his opponents by a pretty dramatic clip, I think.
So it is what it is. Yeah, I'm on him for 2 units, but honestly, the safer play is probably fight doesn't go to decision.
Joe, how about you?
So I'm actually on the other side here. Capoeira against the King of Kung Fu. By the way, if you look at his Tapology photo, you got to hook him up with your barber, John, because he's got a classic Russian bowl cut. So anyway, look, I respect all of C's points here. My counter argument is that Muslim has not exactly fought a murderer's row in the UFC. I like Zaleski to get back on track here. Yeah. He's look, we were talking about him as a top 5 guy, maybe even a title contender before he got derailed by little Jingling, where he got knocked out. So, then he came back and he had a good win against Konchenko. I believe that was in Russia too. So
Brazil.
Was it? Yeah. I'm on the other side of this. I have him in a parlay. Minus, I think 112 is what I got it at. It's a pretty even fight here. Look, I see you could make a case for both sides here. I like this as a spot for, Zaleski to get back on track.
Fair enough. Quinn, how about you?
So like I originally was like looking to play Zaleski at like dog money, but like after taping it, I don't trust him to not get knocked out here. I mean, he gets into like firefights in like almost every single one of his fights. And like against a guy like Muslim Salikov, like that's just not something that you want to do at all. I mean, Muslim is an absolutely fantastic striker. I'm still pissed off because I had bought tickets to UFC Portland before COVID, and he was going to be fighting Nico Price, and that was going to be a fucking awesome fight. And I actually never got to see that, so that was a huge bummer. But yeah, I can't trust Zaleski to grapple consistently here, and I really do think that he needs to like land takedowns here to win. I mean, he averages 0.84 takedowns per 15 minutes. So and with him striking with Muslim for 3 rounds, like that's just like recipe for disaster for him. So if I trusted him to like grapple more, like I would definitely probably hit him at dog money, but I don't trust him to do that here at all. I do like him a lot though. I think he's an absolutely fantastic fighter. I think he has solid fight IQ. I thought it was great that he was able to just, like instead of staying and striking with Curtis Millender, he just took him down and subbed him. Like he did what he needed to do. So, maybe he sees that Muslim has some weaknesses on the mat and he'll look to exploit it, but I just can't trust him enough to do it. So I think for me personally, it's more of a live betting fight. Like I think it's a really, really solid live betting fight, especially at the current odds. So I'm probably just going to like enjoy watching it, drinking my beer, and then hopefully trying to get a play live. So I'm going to pick Muslim inside the distance here just because I don't trust Zaleski to not get into his stunt pulling firefights. But
Yeah. So I have a similar opinion to you here, Quinn. Like I had looked to play Zaleski at dog odds, then I taped it, and it's like so first of all, the guy he attempts like 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. And like I do agree if he gets the fight down, a couple times, he can probably put Muslim in bad situations. But he's not as good at he's not as good a wrestler as Alex Garcia. And like Muslim's like outside of that fight has defended takedowns pretty well. So it's like I do think he could do it, but it's not like a lock. Like if you're like, oh, Zaleski's just gonna come out and just spam takedowns, I don't think it's a lock. He gets him down and submits him. And like kind of to C's point, like I do think the advantage is substantial for Muslim on the feet. Like if you actually look at just both the tape and the numbers, to be honest, like he's been out attempted a bit in the UFC with his volume, but he's really hasn't been outlanded. His striking ratio is actually quite strong. He actually lands strikes, I think, at a 46% clip and defends it at a 68% clip. He throws with real fire, and it's like so. His style does suppress volume, but even when he's had to let his hands go, like in the Staropoli fight, he's had a ton of success. So, like, I don't trust Zaleski to win that fight. I also kind of think Zaleski is a bit overrated just in general, to be honest. Like, he's really fun. Like, Zaleski's Dos Santos, he does capoeira. He throws spinning kicks. He won 7 fights in a row at one point. But every time he takes a step up, he ends up, getting beaten up. And I'm not saying I think Salikov is like a top 10 welterweight. I don't. But I think he's confident enough that if he can keep the standing, he wins. There's no play for me. I thought about playing the inside the distance at -108 because, Zaleski's starting to get chin checked a little bit more and more. And so if he gets put out, it wouldn't shock me. And if he subs him, it wouldn't shock me. But, yeah, it's just hard for me to, I think trusting Salikov to be able to do what he always does is more reliable than trusting Zaleski to suddenly turn into a wrestler. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so when they originally announced this one, I was at least pre-analysis looking to play Salikov. Yeah, you guys pretty much touched on it pretty well. I just think Salikov, at least at space, is a much better striker. Like you guys touched on, Zaleski is going to throw a lot of volume, but he is hittable at the same time. And, and a guy in Salikov who just is an absolute sniper, like he's not a high volume guy, but he's very, very accurate, very, very calculated. And, if you make it really, he's one of those guys where if you just make that one mistake, he can put your lights out. And a guy in Zaleski who's proven to be very, very hittable over the years. So, I mean, I guess the narrative is for Zaleski, at least on the feet, that he's just going to be outpoint him and be able to avoid that big shot. Or if he decides to go, grapple heavy and land takedowns, but which is something we haven't seen historically, at least in high volume. I don't think you can, if you're betting Zaleski, I don't necessarily think you can trust that he's going to be diving on the legs of Muslim Salikhov for 15 minutes here. And so I was also looking at the inside the distance too, but it's one of those situations where, like, if that shot from Salikhov doesn't come because he plays that range game so well, can you expect Zaleski to land something on him on the feet? I mean, like I said, if he does go for takedowns, I mean, he's a black belt. He's going to have a significant edge on the ground. But I guess one important point to note as well is that Salikhov, even after that Alex Garcia loss, like, he took that loss really, really hard and just drilled his grappling and defensive wrestling like religiously. And no pun intended, for like a year. He's like, I'm not getting taken down anymore. So I don't know where his jiu-jitsu is at necessarily, but like, he really took that very, very hard in the sense that he's like, okay, I need to address this part of my game. So from a betting perspective, that's always nice to see. So my consideration number for Salikhov was plus 100. I 100% needed plus money if I'm going to bet this fight. And it just never came. I believe it got down to minus 105. But plus 100 is the number I'm pretty steadfast in here. So I'm going with Salikhov, not like a super confident play, but no bet for me here either.
Lex, up to you.
Yeah, you guys pretty much touched on it. I like Salikhov here in the spot, but I think that if Dos Santos comes with a grapple-heavy game plan, that it's an easy path to victory. But as Luke touched on, we haven't seen it historically, so I don't. If you're backing Dos Santos, I don't think you can count on that. I mean, I know Dos Santos by sub is something crazy, like plus 1,000. So, I mean, if you're into that, I guess, but I don't know. I think Salikhov rolls here, but it's close
All right.
fight.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be fun. It'll be fun either way. I think
Yeah.
it's one of the more exciting fights on the card, to be honest. But yeah, so we move on. Now we get to the main card, and to some people's main event. I won't say the people's main event, but we got Amanda Ribas, Paige Van Zandt. Should be electric. Luke, you want to start us off here?
Actually, I'm going to pass this one to Joe real quick. I know he's got some fire for us off the bat. You come back to me.
Thank you, Luke. So to set this up, okay, so the big joke when Paige Van Zandt fought Rachel Ostovich was a fight where the corners were going to put Vaseline on each other. That was a big joke for this fight. So I'm going to do a screen share. I've got a friend, a really good friend, and it's probably not what you guys think. I got a friend who works at Procter & Gamble. I'm going to actually do a screen share here. Let's see. Let me do Chrome tab. Let me do a screen share.
Joe.
What?
Bring on the fire.
Yeah, let me bring out the fire. Do screen share. Here we go. Wait, Chrome tab. What do I want to do here? Usually it just lets me share the screen. Oh, man, please. You got to let me share the screen.
Oh, here we go. We got
it. Okay, I think that works. Okay, guys. So
whoa, what do we got here?
Okay, so this is from my friend at Procter & Gamble, and this is stuff that forecasts the sale of hand lotion right up until weigh-ins and before the fight, right? So this
guys, are you seeing this, or are you seeing like
or anything?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys don't see it?
No.
Okay, I got this great graph from Procter & Gamble that forecasts the sales of hand lotion leading up to weigh-ins. And you guys aren't seeing this?
No, I tried to pull it up. It didn't work, though.
Oh, man, okay. Well, that sucks, because then I got a reaction to the, a post-fight reaction to the sale of hand lotion, which is essentially a whale exploding. This is really too bad, because I had really hoped to screen share this. Oh, man, that's awful. So anyway, I'm going to stop the screen share since it's not working anyway. Look, minus 850, this is not a fight I want to put a lot of money on. This is Paige Van Zandt's final fight in the UFC. I think that's why the UFC is putting her on this card. Paige Van Zandt does not deserve to be on a main event. She was muscled by Rachel Ostovich in what was like a really interesting fight for a lot of reasons. Ended up, doing okay. And now, she's debuting for Bellator or wherever else she's going to perhaps go and fight. With that said, Paige is really tough. I mean, she will get choked out before she taps. We've seen it happen. So I would say that on DraftKings, it's worth having a share or two of Paige Van Zandt, especially if you're looking to differentiate yourself in the Millie Maker. Rebus is the highest priced fighter on DraftKings. She's minus 850. Let's be honest. I mean, yes, she looked good, in her last fight, but her fight prior to that was a split decision win. So we're not talking like super high level yet. I think she's got a lot of potential. And I think she could do well in the weight class. But we're not talking like the second coming of Joanna Jędrzejczyk here. I mean, this is not – this is 125. We're not talking the second coming of Val here. I mean, so I don't get it. Minus 850 is certainly a pass. I could even theoretically see this going to decision, because Paige is pretty tough. So I wouldn't recommend to play either way on this fight, but I will say that to differentiate yourself, if you're playing DraftKings, you never know. You might want to have a share or two of Paige at a really low price. God, I'm bummed I couldn't get that screen share.
C, how about you?
Yeah, so to differentiate yourself, you could also just play Paige. So there's honestly not many times in your life that you're going to be able to fade 99% of the population and get 6-1 doing it. So I'm definitely in a I'm going to fade everybody here and just see what happens for half a unit. Yeah, I mean, mostly Paige's stuff. Just bite down on the mouthpiece and hopefully land one of her like shitty jump kicks and see what happens. And if Ribas slips and falls, it's gonna look like fucking major value.
Legs, what do you got for me?
Similar to all you guys are probably going to touch on, I have her parlayed at minus 390 when that originally came out with Merab, and that was Merab over Ricky Simone. So that fight also got scrapped. So I have about Borg. Sorry. So I have 4.7 units on Ribas straight. So I mean, pretty much basic thinking here. She's better overall MMA fighter here, and I think that Paige Van Zandt's on the way out. I don't know anything Paige is good at here. In this matchup, maybe other than like C said, other than her toughness, I guess, or maybe flash, flying knee, switch kick that she'll throw 70 times. But yeah, I don't know. I think at the current line, there's no reason you should be playing it. And I like what Joe said. I actually think the over 2.5 actually might have some value. But I don't know. At minus 140, I don't really see it.
Luke, up to you.
Yeah, so I got on this one pretty early as well. This is actually my first max bet of the year. I put 5 units on Amanda Ribas at minus 375. Yeah, I'm kind of going to go in on this one. This whole like Paige Van Zandt like hipster narrative I'm hearing on Twitter, I think is complete bullshit. Like people are sitting there saying that like Amanda Ribas at minus 900 or whatever is like ridiculous. But like if we actually look in terms of percentages, like what does that mean? Well, that means she wins this fight 90% of the times, aka 9 out of 10 times. So please, I would love somebody in the chat, somebody on Twitter, whoever, to please explain to me how Paige Van Zandt wins this fight more than 1 out of 10 times. Amanda Ribas is the better striker. She's the better wrestler. She's the better grappler. She's legitimately better everywhere. And even with all that being said, I'm not saying that Amanda Ribas is the second coming. I'm not saying that. It's all about the matchup at hand. She's better everywhere than this girl. And to me, from like a max bet perspective, it checks every single box that you need to know. And I think from like an easy cash perspective, assuming you got in on this one early, I wouldn't recommend playing anything over minus 500. I think that's ridiculous just from a betting perspective in general. But I think this is literally going to be the easiest cash betting on combat sports since Floyd Mayweather over Conor McGregor.
Now that is a statement. Unlike you, Luke, well, I shouldn't say unlike. I wouldn't say
minus 900.
If there was a 105-pound division, I would say Ribas is the second coming. I think she is fucking legit, to be honest with you. I just think she's probably too small to win a title in this division, unfortunately. But all of that said, she's awesome. I think her striking might be a little overrated, but she's a really strong grappler. Like, she was tossing Marcos around. Like, I know Marcos, she's not a champion, but she's a good grappler in her own right. And, she was throwing her around with relative ease. And so it's like, I kind of actually think the subline's interesting. I'm a bit worried Ribas is going to come out and test her striking here. But even if she does, and even if she's not super successful, I mean, she can pretty much put PBZ on her back literally at any moment she wants. And Paige on her back is just really, really poor. I'd expect Ribas to be able to advance position, pretty much at will. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much what you guys said. I think Luke hit it on the head. I think the line's about right now, to be honest, on Ribas. And
John, the fight is at 125, right? Not 115?
Yeah, no, I know. But
because you're talking about her at 105 when this is actually
no, I know. Yeah, but they're both. I mean, Ribas is a 115er. That's and she's probably real. I mean, she's at 5'2" or 5'3". She's not very big, but I do think there's just significant levels between the two of them. And yeah, Luke, I think you hit it on the head. And I had the exact same parlay legs that I have 5 units on Merab against Borg and Ribas here, which is now 5 units on Ribas minus 390. Won't cash for a lot of profit, but I'll take my one and change.
Come on, you guys don't think it'll be funny if Paige wins?
I think it'll be hilarious if she wins. I'm gonna put my head in the toilet if it happens. Maybe I'll do it live on Periscope for everybody.
Oh no! Don't ruin the haircut.
Quinn, how about you?
Not much to add. I mean, I'm pretty upset right now. I had a 5-unit max bet on Ribas at minus 390 with Merab, and that got fucked. So now I'm at minus 390 with 5 units on Ribas straight to win like 1.5 units. It's going to be awesome if she loses. I also actually put her in a 2-unit parlay with Munoz at minus 114. Fucking awesome parlay. Great line. The easiest fucking parlay that I've cashed in since I started gambling. And then, yeah, he got COVID. So I was actually able to bet my bet back because I got a report that he
had it. People that, Quinn.
What?
Don't tell them you
I don't care. I got my money back on that because I didn't want 7 units on Ribas, But yeah, like to touch on all you guys' points, I mean, Ribas dominates her pretty much everywhere. I mean, even if it stays striking, I mean, Paige, Paige isn't even that great of a striker. She landed 10 to 12. She threw 10 to 12 switch high kicks on Beck Rawlings, and Beck is just stupid enough to get fucking knocked out by one of them. I mean, that was just ridiculous. She even dipped her head, and it's you're not going to adjust to that after the 5th time that Paige throws that. I know Paige has been in the gym. I know she's been grinding, blah, blah, blah. She's from, around where I live. But she's not really UFC material. I mean, I put her in the Shayna Dobson and Rachel Ostovich category, really. I mean, she's just not UFC level. I mean, and I just think that this is one of the biggest mismatches that you could make here. Even if it's at 125, Ribas' skill level is just way too solid here. I personally think she's gonna have her way with Paige on the mat, and I think she's gonna pound her out and eventually get a 3rd round submission. So that's my reasoning here. I was just man, 7 units on Ribas with I just wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't down for that. So yeah.
Well, Quinn, you do know that Paige Van Zandt had elective surgery that seriously affected her balance. She needed to kind of get over that. I mean, learning to walk again is very difficult.
How many doctors did she have to go see about her arm? 3 or 4?
Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about. Her arm. Yeah.
Anyway, we move on to a rematch from I forgot which pay-per-view it was, but we got a rematch. It's Jessica Andrade, Rose Namajunas. I have a bit of a rant here. Okay. So when you're betting a fight and you're capping a fight, if one fighter generally has an output advantage, generally has a power advantage, generally has a cardio advantage, and generally has a wrestling advantage, do you typically cap that fighter at plus 200 or plus 170? No, you don't. So, okay. So that's the bird's eye view of two random fighters. So now let's look at this fight, this particular fight. What sample do we have to cap this off at this number? We have a 5-minute sample where Rose dominated a fight for 5 minutes, dropped her at Jessica Andrade with a clinch knee, and defended takedowns with a Kimura. To me, even if you make 5 minutes when we have a wealth of data on both fighters is absolutely insane to justify a line like this with. It's just Rose looked the best she ever did in her career, sure. But it's you can't look at a 5-minute sample and say, that is what Rose Namajunas is, and that's what she's going to do every single time this matchup plays out. And then if you go even further in, so she made a match. So Andrade, she was lighting her up, no question about that. I'm not going to say that didn't happen, but Andrade was able to actually close the distance pretty easily. She pinned her to the fence 3 times. The problem was Rose pretty much used a Kimura to defend the takedown on all of those attempts, and that is a niche move that works for that lift that Andrade likes to do. But a couple things. First of all, the reason she got spiked on her head is because she tried to do it again and Andrade adjusted and just put her down there. So number one, I don't think it's particularly likely that she's going to be able to just grab a Kimura and hold on to it. Number two, Andrade doesn't need to go to the lift. If you actually go and watch the tape on her, she has a lot of other takedowns. She goes to the double leg a lot. She's got a decent single leg. And so even if she doesn't, even if Rose does do that again, she's got other outs she can use. And then third, look at Rose for her career. The reason she's using a Kimura, which is really not – if Kimura was an effective way to defend takedowns, Tony Martin would have the best takedown defense in UFC history. But that's not really the case. And so if she's only defended takedowns at a 46% rate her entire career. And so it's I think Andrade, first of all, she knows that she used that last time. She's going to be able to close distance. She's going to be able to take her down here. Could Rose knock her out early in this fight? Yeah, she could, but it's a women's 115-pound fight. I don't think that's particularly likely. And if you actually look at the strike that hurt Andrade the first time, it was a clinch knee. I don't know how repeatable of an outcome that is. And so, I just kind of expect – and then if you look at the cardio aspect of this fight, we've seen Rose slow in just about every fight. She slowed against JJ. She slowed against Carolina. She was slowing against Andrade when she got spiked the first time. I just don't – and we know that Andrade has absolutely elite cardio. And so, ultimately, I just think – don't get me wrong. I don't expect Andrade to dominate, but given, that she will attempt takedowns, that she's a good wrestler, that Rose can't defend takedowns, and that Andrade has a gas tank and Rose has a somewhat poor gas tank, I slightly favor Andrade here, despite what happened for this tiny 5-minute sample the first time they fought. And so I have a big bet here. I did 3 units at plus 200, which I got to bet 365. It's down to plus 170 now, I think. But yeah, I just think the line is very off here. I think just saying Rose dominated for 5 minutes last time, she's going to do it again, makes little to no sense. But yeah, that's my take. Luke, how about you?
So I think this is definitely a definition of a dog or pass. I definitely don't have the strong opinion, I guess, on Andrade as a lot of you guys do. Actually, I think Rose takes it in the rematch. I think you do make a lot of really good points, John. But I guess my big thing here in terms of this particular matchup, I think what Rose can do, I'm not going to be one of those guys, as you just touched on, who's only going to look at that 5-minute sample size of the first fight and then just make this overarching argument for why Rose should now be minus 200. Definitely not doing that. I think the line is way too high on Rose. But I do think, she did have a lot of success in that first round of that fight too. And Andrade actually did really, really well with the leg kicks. I know Joanna actually did really well with the leg kicks as well against Rose. So I'm curious to see if Andrade goes right back to those again, because I think it was something that really helped her in the first round. But in terms of like a technical prowess, I think Rose is a girl who has the tools to beat a girl like Jessica Andrade at least a decent percentage of the time. So, but granted, this is a betting podcast though. So, I mean, if you're getting Jessica Andrade at plus 200, I don't hate that bet at all. And I definitely can't advocate a bet on Rose at minus 200, but I do think, at least from a picking perspective, I think she's going to be able to play that stick and move game. I'm just going to go out and say it. I think that whole Spike KO was a fluke. That's not to say that Andrade has never sit there and elevated a girl with a high crotch and slammed her before, because she's done it multiple times. But in terms of actually putting a girl out, I think Rose is going to make some adjustments here. I think she's probably going to be able to get it done on the cards. But once again, John, to your point, I think from a betting perspective, it's definitely a dog or pass, and I don't hate the bet.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It was definitely a fluke. I mean, that's not really a question to me. My question was more, if she doesn't hold on to a Kimura, she's probably getting put down whenever Andrade wants. But James, also, before we move on to Lags here, she is not actually with Whitman right now, Rose.
I was actually going to bring that up. Yeah.
With Greg Nelson. Lags, what do you got here?
Yeah, similar thinking to you, but I have a little bit of smaller play. I have a small parlay with Andrade, Yan, and Volkanovski, actually. So that pays out plus 490. So I had a half unit on that. Similar thinking here to you. I just think the line is a huge head scratcher, and I couldn't tell you why people. I guess similar reasoning to the Mo Green John Vellante fight. I guess at minus 240 right now, where Rose is probably hovering around. I mean, that seems kind of crazy to like justify her given a 5-minute sample size like you talked about. I don't know. I just think that's crazy. People talking about parlaying her and this and that. I think if you're playing Rose, I think Rose decision or maybe Rose sub. But other than that, I don't know. It's like Luke said, it's dog or pass. So,
see, I mean,
yeah, I like Andrade quite a bit. Honestly, I'm kind of salty, I guess. Well, I don't know. I got in for 2 units at I think plus 155, or maybe it was plus 150, and then now it's kind of creeping back up. Didn't really. I mean, I'm probably going to add a little bit more. I guess I was just kind of waiting to see where the line went. I honestly thought Andrade money was going to come in, but I guess that's not the case. But yeah, in general, I think even in the first fight, I do think Rose is going to have success with her jab. I know the knee was kind of like the changing moment of the round, but yeah, I mean, Rose was piecing her up with the jab. But I guess the difference, to me, between a lot of people point to the JJ fight, but JJ was styling on her bad at distance. I mean, she was landing at a 63% clip. Whereas Rose, even in the first fight, was only landing at a 42% clip from distance. And JJ has elite takedown defense and grappling. Whereas Rose, her takedown defense is not good, just in general. And Andrade, in 9 minutes of the fight, she was able to close the distance pretty well. I mean, she definitely ate some damage closing it, but essentially that's what she needs to do is eat damage, kick the leg, get in close, and really let her hands go. And then, shoot takedowns, where she probably has a pretty, I think she has a pretty good edge, just on the mat in general. at first I was a little weary, and then I went back and watched that Claudia fight. And I do think, even if she doesn't get the slam knockout, like she's basically going on to win that round, like 2 minutes on top, and then round 3, Rose is pretty gassed. So yeah, I think Andrade is more like 55% here. But yeah, whatever. I guess people want to bet Rose until the line just keeps going up. Go for it.
Someone's betting her. Someone is putting real money there.
Yeah, I don't know how they could just keep. It just keeps going. I mean, I don't even understand it really. But
Joe, are you the guy betting Rose?
No. I mean, look, I like. I guess Rose has an advantage in technical striking.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna actually, again, the guy stole my thunder, but I don't like to plagiarize. Newsom again. I believe that a 3-round fight actually, favors Jessica Andrade as opposed to a 5-round fight. She doesn't have to try to preserve any cardio. She can go out there and fight really hard and heavy. She's got the power advantage for sure. I mean, plus, and here's my famous narrative on this fight. Rose is a little bit of a head case. Like, I will always have a very fond memory and really be indebted to Rose Namajunas because, she choked out Angela Hill in one of the tough finales. And that actually won me a contest that got me to a UFC event where I got to sit with Frank Mir and have dinner with him and his wife. It was like really, really cool. And it was like in Rose Namajunas, like choking out Angela Hill was like a big part of that. And she actually did a standing choke, which was kind of cool. So I always have fond memories of Rose Namajunas. She's a bit of a head case. I don't know if this whole like Pat Berry thing is really good for her. I mean, reporters on child abuse. What?
Did you watch the countdown?
No, I did not. Not yet.
It's bizarre. For anybody who just watch it.
I don't get it. It's kind of odd. So I think she's got a ton of potential. Obviously she does. She beat JJ twice. But I do see Andrade having an advantage in a lot of key areas of this fight. Plus, how often is the winner of a fight a minus 200 dog in a rematch? You don't see that too often either. So I think she's going to be really high owned on DraftKings because she's really cheap. I obviously think there's value in the number. I haven't bet it yet. I was hoping to C's point that maybe it even gets better because for some reason someone's out there putting money on Rose Namajunas hand over fist. I don't get it. So you've got someone, and look, I sympathize with her anxiety issues, right? But how is it good traveling to Abu Dhabi and being essentially stuck in a hotel, room for days, like on your anxiety? I don't get it, man. So for all those reasons, I like Andrade.
Wearing a burqa on the street, probably too.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, I have one unit on Andrade at plus 155. I never really understood this line. I mean, I thought it would open at like near Pick'em, and then like I didn't think that it was going to get better, so I just hit her at plus 155, and then she ended up going all the way up to like plus 204 on like one of my books. Crazy, just absolutely insane. So like my narrative for the first fight was like I didn't think that Rose had the cardio or the power edge to like deter Andrade from walking her down, and I essentially thought that Andrade was going to be able to take her down whenever she wanted to. I still think that. I do think the first round obviously is going to be sketchy, but like I completely agree with you, John. I thought that she was going on to like winning that second round, and then that third round is pretty much all on Andrade here. I mean, like I don't really see Rose addressing her cardio issues in this amount of time. Yeah. Also, like you can adjust to that Kimura trap, but like the way that like she put her head on the outside when she was going for that takedown, which is like really all the adjustment that you need for that there. I really do think that like once she gets a hold of Rose, and especially after Rose slows down, she's just gonna grapple fuck her. She's gonna be able to land takedowns at will here and really just like zap her cardio. I really liked her her body work that she did, and I really liked the leg kicks that she was throwing. I just really don't understand this line. I think you could also like what is Andrade round 3. I think you could probably play Andrade round 3, maybe like probably KO. I think I might actually hit that prop after we're done talking about this. It's plus.
Yeah, I don't hate that either.
It's plus 1,600. Yeah, that's not bad at all. I mean, if this gets to the third round, that third round is going to be pretty much all Andrade, in my opinion. So, like, yeah, I mean, at plus 155, and going up all the way to plus 204. I mean, you have to play Andrade here. I mean, I don't really understand who is laying like minus 200 on Rose here. And the head case issue is that's a real legit issue. So yeah, I like Andrade here. I also think it's not out of the realm of possibility that she just knocks her out cold late. Like Andrade swings fucking bombs. Like she hits really, really hard. So yeah, I like Andrade here. I think that we're getting a absolutely fantastic line, and I don't really understand why it's lined this way. So
yeah, I agree. I still think a lot of late money is going to come in on Andrade, to be honest with you. But anyway, we move to the first of 3 title fights. We got Peter Yan trying to win his first title, taking on former featherweight king Jose Aldo. What do you got here, Luke?
Honestly, really no strong opinion here. This is probably the one I don't want to say I've went back and forth on. I guess if that's the case, I'd probably be betting Aldo. But I guess my big thing with Aldo is that I think you can expect probably a pretty strong early showing from Aldo. But, if Jan's going to be a guy who's going to come forward and walk him down over the course of 5 rounds potentially. So, and, we've always talked about it, in these past Aldo matchups, like why the guy has not went to his leg kicks, which is something that's been a very consistent factor, at least in terms of what his success has been historically. And he's kind of gotten away from it in recent years. And, we've seen the guy kind of drop off a cliff for a little bit, now he's down at 135. So I don't want to say I'm necessarily like sold on this Peter Yan train. I do think there's things that Aldo can do in there that will pose Peter Yan problems, but I don't know. I'm probably going to go Peter Yan here, but not a strong, confident play. I think both guys can have varying success, but to me, Aldo at this point is still just a bit of a question mark. So I don't think you can confidently lay that plus number on Aldo, but I also don't really want to lay over minus 2 to 1 on Yan because of those things I said in terms of Aldo, in terms of providing potential problems. So yeah, this fight's passed for me, but I'm picking Yan.
Legs?
So I have 2 plays here. Like I just touched on in the last fight, the 3-team parlay, and then I also put 1 unit on fight doesn't get a decision at minus 158. So similar to what Luke was saying, I think that Yan's pressure is going to be able to cause Aldo a lot of problems here, and I think that Aldo in the early rounds can cause Yan some problems. But I think just the weight cut in general and the fact that this is a 5-round fight, I just think the constant pressure of Yan is just going to wither Aldo over the course of 5 rounds. So I'm predicting like a 3rd round, 4th round knockout for Yan. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Aldo has a chance, but I think out of the 3 title fights, I think he's like the least live dog in my opinion.
That makes sense. C, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good, I guess not a good spot, but yeah, I mean, I think like I'm having a hard time, I guess, on the Yan side. I just think that there's just some question marks there. And, I mean, I know people are saying, like, this might go later and, like, how's Aldo going to look? But, I went back and I watched the Marlon fight and, like, there's, like, nothing wrong with Aldo's cardio in that fight in round 3, round 2. I mean, his volume actually increased. Not that he landed, but, he attempted more strikes, and he was constantly moving forward, controlling the octagon there. And like, so like, I don't know that, I guess I don't know that I agree with like this notion that Aldo's just gonna like crumble, I guess, after the 3rd round. And if anything, I think Aldo just in general technique wise is I mean, I know he's a little bit older, but still, I mean, he moves his head well. Still got some crisp boxing, and he's honestly between him and Jan, like who has more power? It's definitely Aldo, in my opinion. At least he has the bigger one shot type power. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have like any like super like strong like one way or the other. I think like you kind of should probably play Aldo, I guess, at the current line. I think there's a little bit of value, at least just finding out like what Jan is. I mean, Jimmy Rivera did beat Jan pretty much for the majority of the fight, outside of a couple brief exchanges that stumbled Rivera. Yeah, I mean, I know Aldo doesn't use leg kicks anymore, but just in general, I think his boxing is good enough to really make it competitive versus Jan. I actually don't mind the over 2.5 there. I think he's actually pretty safe because Marlon, I mean, all things that he is, I mean, he does throw probably more pop than Jan, just in general. He has more power, and Aldo looked fine there. So maybe 135 is for Aldo. I don't know.
Joe, how about you?
Okay, so I'm actually glad C mentioned the Rivera fight because look, there is a path to victory for Aldo. However, I have a lot of concerns, which actually pushed me on to Yan. Not pushed me. I liked Yan, and it kind of reaffirmed me on Yan. One is Aldo has actually got to make 135 here, not 136. That extra pound, it doesn't sound like much, but it is. I think he was eating like 5 pounds of lettuce a day when he was trying to make weight last time, and he just did not look good. 5-round fight here. I agree with Lags that I could see Yan wearing down Aldo here, and unless Aldo reads that book, Leg Kicks for Dummies, I really don't see anything. I don't see him having that big of an advantage anywhere. I mean, I think Atlanta's going to out-volume him. Maybe Aldo's got a power advantage. So what ended up happening here, quite interestingly enough, is DraftKings gave me a nice little 25% profit boost. So I actually did before Usman and Burns washed out. I did $1,000 parlay because that was where they capped it with Jan and Usman with a 25% profit boost, which I really liked. So now I'm sitting on Jan minus 182. So I'm going to keep that bet at minus 182. So it's 1,000 to win, to pay 1,550 with the boost. I'll keep that bet. I've also got Jan in a parlay with Rebus, Usman, and Santos. So I got that going. I'll probably make a few other plays, but I mean, I like Yan here. I do see the path to victory for Aldo. I just, with the intangibles and with Aldo traveling from Brazil and having to pay 135 and, not using leg kicks anymore. And it's going to be, even though it's air conditioned, I mean, it's still going to be hot. So, and they are fighting kind of like, by the time that fight goes off, it's probably going to be not close to noon, probably about 11 a.m., 10 a.m. local time. So it's going to start to get hot. So I like Yan here. I mean,
DraftKings, are you avoiding this matchup in DraftKings?
No. I actually, I mean, again, I don't think it's the best. It's a great question. I like this title fight the least of the three. I'm probably going to have the least exposure to this fight because it can go to decision. And it could be relatively low scoring, even though it's 5 rounds. I like the other 2 title fights way more for DraftKings.
Yeah. Quinn, how about you?
So I really wanted to bet Aldo like all week, but like after watching his tape, like the guy just like if he threw leg kicks like consistently like he used to, I would be all over him here. But he just doesn't. Like he just completely like went away from the leg kicking game. I guess it's because he injured his foot a few fights ago. But yeah, like Jan is pretty susceptible to leg kicks. I mean, Jimmy Rivera landed 19, I believe it was 19 out of 27 leg kicks on him. And those were definitely impacting Jan. So I do, and like Aldo is like has some of the best leg kicks in the game. So like I do think that he needs to like try to at least implement like some sort of leg kick game here with his like pressure. I just don't know if he's going to be able to, and he's been pretty low volume his last few fights. I mean, he's essentially pretty opportunistic in my opinion, and it's just I just don't want to like get burned out on him like lasting 3 rounds and then like just fading away in the champ rounds and just Jan just picking him apart. So I am gonna pick Jan here by decision. I do like Jan's boxing. I do like his pressure. I like his footwork. I love his stance switches. But like watch out with like betting Jan here, like throwing the juice down on Jan. I mean, he got dropped by Dodson, and that's kind of a concern here because like Aldo might be like he might have a lot of fights under his belt, but he still hits pretty damn hard. So yeah, like I'm gonna pick Jan here. I don't know. Like someone had posted in Twitter the other day they got Jan round 4, 5, or decision at plus 200. I think that's an absolutely fantastic bet. But I think it's going to go the distance, and I think Jan's just going to get his hands raised in later rounds here. So Jan by I don't know, probably split decision.
Yeah. So I do have a play here. I have 2.5 units on the fight doesn't go to decision minus 166. And what's interesting is actually to C's point, I do agree that the notion that Aldo it'll necessarily crumble isn't necessarily accurate. Like for me, I see 2 kind of potential ways this fight plays out. And to be clear, I still don't think Aldo has great cardio. Way number 1 is basically, maybe Jan doesn't really want to engage that much with Aldo because of the threat he presents. And if that happens, I actually would favor Aldo pretty significantly because I think as pretty as Jan's boxing is, I don't see how you can watch the Jinsu round 1 of the Jinsu Sun fight, the Dodson fight, the entire Rivera fight outside of the 2 knockdowns and say, oh, this guy's the next big thing. Maybe he is. Maybe I'm underestimating him. But I watched Jimmy Rivera box him up pretty easily for like 12 and a half minutes of that 15-minute fight. And even Aldo at 33, I think I'd still say is a better boxer than Jimmy Rivera is. And so, yeah, if Jan doesn't really engage, I actually think Aldo is very live to win a decision here because I do think he hits harder, and I do think, I just trust that he's more technical. And now the other way is Jan doing what Jan does, and that's pressuring very aggressively and upping the output. And in that scenario, I just kind of think if it turns into a firefight and Jan forces that firefight, I think Aldo's very live for a knockout early in that. But I don't think, as you saw in the 2 fights with Holloway when he really got pressure and the output got cranked, I don't think he can get involved in a firefight for 5 rounds and not gas out badly. And if he does gas out badly, like probably getting finished. I don't think Aldo's sucking it up for 10 minutes. Like when you look at the second Holloway fight, Holloway's basically he can't even get his hands up really towards the end of round 3. Do I think Jan will do that to him? I'm not sure. But I do think in that kind of fight, there's going to be a lot of heavy bombs landed on both sides, and Aldo will either put him out early or probably get finished late. And I'm leaning that kind of being – what'd you say?
In that fight, though, Holloway threw like 300, 400.
Sure. Jan's output is insane, though. Like, I mean, if you actually look at – pull it up now. Yeah, I mean, Jan's attempting like 12 strikes a minute. So it's not like we're talking about something that's not going to bring like a serious pace here. Maybe he won't, and in which case it's going to be a real bad bet. And frankly, like I said, I'd favor Aldo. But, if he does, I do think Aldo's live to knock him out. I just also kind of think that in a fight where Aldo has to throw 200 to 300 strikes to stay competitive, he's probably going to end up gassing out. But, I mean, that's my read on it anyway. Like, I do think And obviously leg kicking would help, but he threw 23 leg kicks across his last 6 fights, so I don't think that's likely. But I actually think Aldo's going to win the early exchanges in this fight. Jan likely takes over late unless he doesn't pressure hard, in which case I think Aldo probably dominates the fight, to be honest. But with that, we move on to a perhaps even more interesting bout. We got a rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Lags, I'll let you take this away.
Yeah, so I have a pretty big play here, actually. I have 3 units on Volkanovski at minus 200. So I guess conversely to what Joe was talking about with Aldo reading the leg kicking book, Max should probably read the Czech leg kicking book. So I guess I'll touch on so 5 of his previous opponents who actually bring somewhat of a leg kicking game. Cub Swanson, 17-23. Jeremy Stevens, 24-26. Lamas, 25-28. Edgar, 18-21. And then Volkanovski in the last fight, 79-93. So, I mean, if you were to tell me, like, I get it, Max is, long reigning featherweight champ and everything, but I think to say that he's the value side here would say that you would have to see in the tape that he's historically made adjustments after these minor setbacks where you're really not seeing much of an adjustment. So I don't know. The narrative that Max, I think even in those later rounds in that fight, I mean, they were close, but I scored that fight at 50-45 personally, maybe 49-46 given that last round for Max. So I think Volk's just going to be able to change the game plan up here and attack either leg and be able to neutralize Max's biggest path to victory is just outpacing him and outpressuring him. So I think Volk wins the decision here, but it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a late knockdown, or a late knockout, just because I think that for Max to be competitive in the later rounds, I think he's going to have to open his game up a little bit, which I think might be susceptible to him getting countered. So I like Volkanovski in this spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of that. C, how about you?
Yeah, I'm on the other side. I played Max for 2.5 units. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with Volk being a favorite or anything. I guess I just we're in the middle of coronavirus. They're going to be in the heat, high variance striking match. You could go back and watch the first fight, and all of us, score it for Alex. But 2 judges gave Max 2 rounds, and mostly, at least my assessment would be because Max throws a shit ton of head strikes, and sometimes it just takes. There could just be 2 judges who really don't care much about leg strikes, which is a pretty good possibility. I mean, we've seen it time and time again where leg strikes really aren't, I guess judged properly. But I think Max, later on in the fight, rounds 4 and 5, not even just switching to southpaw, but just in general, I think he had a little bit more success going to Alex's body. Alex is using the high guard, and basically, your body's just wide open. So, I think Max was really starting to get that in the later rounds. And Max kind of, I guess, in this scenario, really needs to bite down a little bit more on his mouth guard and fucking stand there and go for some longer combinations. He needs to disrupt those leg kicks more. Just, I guess, in terms of checking leg kicks, yeah, maybe he probably isn't making that adjustment. Although I guess my counterpoint to making these adjustments is that when you are always winning, you're not making adjustments, and that goes for any sport. If you have a ton of success, you just generally aren't making adjustments. So Max never really has needed to make that type of adjustment until this last fight. So I kind of expect Max to make some type of adjustment, whether it's working the body, even that I think in round 3 toward the end of the round, and early round 4, He was throwing that knee down the middle. I mean, those are all things that can disrupt, Alex's kicking game. So yeah, I mean, I kind of like Max to make these adjustments, and in the middle of like the current situation, I think any fight where like you have one guy who's going to throw like.
You all right?
Lose him. We lost him.
All right, Joe, what do you think? What do you got for us?
I guess, sorry, I was actually going to add a quick point in there. Actually, he was finished. I guess my quick point, his contention would be that Max never really had to check his leg kicks because he had such success throughout these fights. But I think that with this limited amount of training that he's had, with the fact that I think that he's not even, he thought he won that fight.
Yeah.
He thought it was like even a close fight. So, I mean, I just don't think that his mind, like his head is all right there. And I just think that it's slowly just gone downhill.
I mean, I guess to Max's
Sorry,
point,
see,
he might have thought. I guess to Max's point, he might have thought he won the fight because he was constantly moving. Like the leg kicks might not have been an issue to him in his head.
Right. I guess I was touching real quick when you were gone that I just think that with the limited amount of training and like sparring partners that Max is going to have, I think that him adjusting to the leg kicking, checking, like won't be, I don't know, like it's more of like a hope, I think, with like the Zoom training and everything that's going on. I don't know. I just don't think it's good game plan for him, but that's just me. I don't know.
Joe, what do you got?
So I kind of fall on the side of Lags here. I don't think that Max, I don't know that he necessarily has it in him to adjust. And when you lose a title fight like that and you're a champion, you do have to make adjustments. So I do agree that, adjustments are the key. I just don't know. He seems very laissez-faire about it, especially as it relates to his training. And, the idea that he thought he won was interesting. Like, I don't know if he was punch drunk or, we've seen him kind of have some funny statements in the past. And he does take a lot of damage. I mean, he took a lot of damage in that Poirier fight. Oh my God. So, and he's a guy that's always been willing to take one to give one or take two to give one. So while I love Max as a DraftKings play, because even in a loss, we could get 50 or 60 points out of Max.
Maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more. I do have to lean, not lean. I do kind of like Volkanovski here simply because I don't believe Max has made sufficient adjustments to actually, perform better in this fight. I think the line might be a little wide, but I wouldn't bet. I'm not betting Volkanovski, but I do really like this fight to target on DraftKings, and I could actually pick Volkanovski to be end still.
Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much agree with Lags and Joe. I mean, his commentary about how he did in the fight was like very, very concerning, and I also think that he is like kind of on his way out of the 145-pound division. I know he has some pretty tough weight cuts, and he has like mentioned about eventually moving up to 155. I think that his title fight loss might have been like the nail in the coffin with that. I don't really know if his how his training camp has been going. I don't know how much narrative you can bring into that. He might be playing mind games here, but like when you get landed on by 75 leg kicks, I mean, what kind of adjustment can you really make to deter that? I mean, that's a fucking shit ton of leg kicks.
Yeah.
So like I just don't know if Max has the motivation to do that. Like I completely agree with that narrative. Now granted, I'm not going to the window to bet Volkanovski at the line against Holloway here. I do think it's going to be very, very competitive, but ultimately I do think Volk is hungrier to get the win here, and I think he's hungrier to keep the belt and keep the division moving. I mean, so yeah, I'm definitely gonna go with Volkanovski here, probably by another decision. I don't really think he's gonna stop Holloway here. I know a lot of people are confident in saying he's gonna do that, but Max is very, very durable, and he's still has some absolutely fantastic striking. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with Volkanovski here, probably by another unanimous decision. I just don't really know where Holloway is at and where his head is at, or really what's what does he want in the future, So those are all just some pretty big red flags to me, especially since he thought he won those 2 rounds in that fight. I mean, that's just so concerning to me here. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Volk to retain his title, and I think that Max needs to go to the drawing board, hit the gym, bulk up, just kind of just like Poirier did, and make a run at 155.
Luke, what do you got?
Yeah, so I'll keep this brief. You guys touched on it pretty well. I got 3 units on Volkanovski at -182. In full transparency, I think that this is just a bad matchup for Max Holloway. I don't want to sound like some Johnny-come-lately in saying that, because I did have 2 units on Alexander Volkanovski at +165 in the first iteration of the matchup. So I personally, I don't understand this narrative for Holloway here that he's going to make these adjustments to a lot of Lags made a great point. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that these adjustments will be made. Hypothetically, let's say best case scenario for Max Holloway that the adjustments are made, at least in terms of the leg kicks. I don't think that necessarily means that now Max Holloway is shoo-in to win this fight. If you actually look at Volkanovski, obviously the leg kicks were a big component of the fight, but what he does really well is he just doesn't allow himself to be bullied, which is what Max has just done to virtually every single person he's fought. Outside of Dustin Poirier, which was one of the most recent fights he lost, was a guy who just did not let himself get bullied largely. So to me, I just, even at this massive shift, at least in terms of line from fight 1 to fight 2, maybe I guess I'm off or whatever, and I look like an idiot. Maybe this fight plays a lot closer than it should be, and -182 doesn't look like value. But to me, it's a favorite or situation pass, because I don't think there's anything that indicates that this is a good matchup for Max Holloway at all, outside of maybe some other narrative or whatever, or assumptions that are being made. But I don't see anything being different from the first fight to the second fight. So, like I said, I got 3 units on Alexander Volkanovski at -182.
Yeah, so I'll be quick because you guys hit on a lot of what I was going to say. I have no play. I tried to look for one. I can't really find one that I love. I capped Volkanovski about -186. I just think he's kind of the better fighter. I played him at plus money the last time these two fought. My issue, though, with playing him now here and why I only have it at 186 is I do give him an ever so slight edge in finishing upside, but I still don't think the finish is very likely. C touched on it a bit, but in what's liable to be a very, very high output fight, I do think Volkanovski is better, and I think he'll likely win more exchanges. But in that kind of fight, it really only takes kind of if you look, I scored a 50-45, but yeah, 2 judges had a 48-47. And what if there's a moment in round 2 where Holloway just catches him flush and wobbles him? Suddenly he wins that fight on the cards, even though he lost, 17, 18 minutes of the fight. And so it's one of those things where it's if I had more faith that Volkanovski was going to hurt Max a few times, I'd be on him here. I do expect he's going to win the majority of exchanges. I do think he's the better fighter. I just think against a guy I don't expect Holloway to make many adjustments, to be honest. I expect Volkanovski to win pretty handily. But even if he, I guess my point is there's a world where they both land 170 significant strikes and, maybe even Volk outlands him again and Holloway has a moment or two that swings the fight. It's that kind of fight where it's just kind of I don't think it's a coin flip, but it's not, it wouldn't take that much to swing it. Of course, I'm going to say this: Volkanovski's going to come and knock him out, and then I'm going to want to smack myself for not betting him. But yeah, so I have no play. I don't mind a play on either side. I just personally, don't really see an edge either way at the moment. So we move on, go to the main event here. We got Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal. This is the real main event, and it's also the people's main event. Joe, what do you got for us? Joe, you're on mute.
I use the computer sometimes for work, and I clicked on the wrong. In this case, I don't think there's a lot to talk about here. I do think this is a more interesting fight than Burns. I just don't know what look, and I'm happy that Masvidal's getting paid. I think these fighters are tragically underpaid, so I like that he was able to leverage this. I had a thought, and I get that it's probably not how the contract works with Abu Dhabi, but I just don't know why they didn't let these two guys fight in Vegas. They could have fought at a normal time and not have to do the travel. But it is what it is. Since there are no fans in the audience anyway, does it really make that much a difference? I do like the fight more. I think it's more compelling. With that said, I don't think the outcome is going to be any different. I think I love the change of training for Usman. I love that he left, that he went to Colorado to train. I think that's great. I think it's going to really, really help. And I'm surprised the line didn't open up a little wider. I was thinking it would open up a bit wider. It's a more compelling fight. I don't think it means it's more competitive. Just compelling. I don't know what George was training. I know he was helping Poirier. On a full camp, maybe I'd give him a little bit. Maybe I'd think more highly of Masvidal. But I think Usman's going to win. I think he's going to grind him out, use his wrestling, just bully him, and make it look relatively easy.
Quinn, what do you got for us?
So I was able to get 1.5 units on Usman by decision at plus 200. I thought that was kind of a weird line. I mean, the bookies think that Usman's going to knock Masvidal out more than winning a decision, and I don't really get the narrative. I mean, Masvidal has only been finished twice and 48 pro fights, and Usman is not really a prolific finisher at all. I think Usman's going to pretty much dominate him in the later parts of the rounds. It all just depends on can Masvidal land that kill shot in the first 2.5 rounds? That's really as much time as I personally give him here. I do think he can make the first couple of rounds competitive. I do think Masvidal is probably one of the best strikers that Usman has faced, and I think that he has absolutely fantastic takedown defense. I don't have the numbers up right here. What is it?
78%, I think.
Yeah, 78% takedown defense, but he gets pushed up against the cage way too easily. Usman is just much stronger than him. He's the best wrestler that Masvidal has ever faced. And I just think he's going to really, really put it on weight and ragdoll him. I do think that I'm going to do a couple of little pokes on Usman KO round 4 and round 5, just because I think that we're going to see a pretty significant cardio dump from Jorge here. Him playing spike ball on count, when you mentioned spike ball on countdown is just, it's not really the things that you really want to hear from a guy who's fighting a cardio machine in Usman. So yeah, I thought that I really liked that line that I got on Usman by decision at plus 200. I do think that I would favor Masvidal quite a bit more if he had a full training camp here. But the lines are just weird. I mean, they gave Burns a better chance at winning the fight over Masvidal, and personally, I don't really agree with that at all. So yeah, I have 2 units. I mean, I don't even know how many I have. 1.5 units or whatever it is on Usman by decision at plus 200.
Yeah, but you.
Yeah, I got 1.25 on Masvidal. Yeah, I guess I don't know about that whole training camp. Justin Poirier was on somebody's show today and basically said that Jorge has been in the gym every single day, and he was his main sparring partner for the last whatever 8 weeks, and that basically he's had Bo Nickel and whatnot in there every single week. So I don't know how much of the him just playing spike ball is true, but yeah, I mean cardio is a concern. But yeah, I think Masvidal has good takedown defense. Even in the clinch, I think Masvidal is solid. He does get backed up against the cage. I mean, it is possible that Usman's just a lot stronger in the sense. I don't really think, at least until Jorge's cardio's gone, if it is gone, I don't really think that Usman's necessarily just going to be able to lay on him. And I know this is the best wrestler that Jorge's faced, but at the same time, Usman's really never faced anybody like Masvidal. And what I mean by that is somebody who can use his jab like Masvidal, who has the footwork like Masvidal. Masvidal has a really clean jab. He works those body kicks pretty well. He's kind of hard to disrupt just because his arsenal's just pretty, I guess it's better than what I originally thought going into this. I actually think Masvidal's a little bit better than I guess I had him pegged. But I think he's going to make Usman work. I mean, yeah, like the common sense, play here is just Usman's going to basically grind him against the cage, land takedowns, and kind of do Usman things. But yeah, I'm willing to take a shot on Masvidal here, and the chance that Usman maybe falls in love with his hands. Even in that case, even if it doesn't come down to that, I think we're going to get a good amount of time where Masvidal is at range. I think he's going to be able to stuff some takedowns here and tee off on Usman. I'm not really a big fan of Usman on the feet. I know some people are, but there's instances versus Kobe where he's getting fucking teed off on, and if Masvidal's teeing off on you, you might just get slept.
Yeah, so I'm a little frustrated that the Burns fight got canceled, to be honest. I was on Usman really heavy, and honestly, full disclosure, I'm not going to go into a whole rant about it, but I thought Usman should have been like minus 500 in that spot. I thought that line was comical. Now we have this. I do have a couple plays here. I played 2 units in Usman by decision plus 200, 0.5 on round 4, winning in round 4 by TKO plus 1,500, and 0.5 winning by TKO in round 5 plus 1,800. I do think it'll be moderately competitive early. You're right, Stevie. Masvidal is definitely a far better striker and far more skilled striker than anybody Usman's fought. It wouldn't shock me if he lands heavy early a few times, lands heavy in exchanges. The issue for me is I do think Masvidal can give more resistance than most of the guys, like maybe Edwards, who was pretty young at the time that Usman's faced in the grappling. But Usman does such a good job of cutting off the cage, when he's trying to get you to the fence. And maybe Masvidal can get out of the clinch and hold his own in there. But Usman's output there is just insane. And that's kind of just my thing with this whole fight. It's I don't think Masvidal is necessarily KO or bust. If he comes out here and Usman just can't hold him down at all and he can get away and get space, he could definitely win a decision. I just don't think that's going to happen. I personally think extraordinarily highly of Usman's game, and just from just his optics in general and his round winning ability is kind of insane. Whereas Masvidal, has been known to kind of coast at times, and so I kind of capped Usman around minus 300, to be honest. I think the decision line's got a fair amount of value. I think he probably wins this fight as a decision by decision at close to 50% clip. But I do think Masvidal's live. I just personally think Usman's not a lock, but is very likely to land significantly more strikes. He's likely going to be the guy having takedown success. Plus, he's had a full camp. Whereas, I know Masvidal's been in the gym, but big difference between, warming guy, sparring partners and like training for, a 5-round fight. So yeah, I kind of think maybe the first round or two will be competitive-ish. I think Usman's going to take over. I think his round winning ability is just too good here. But yeah, maybe Masvidal can win. He's definitely. I wouldn't say he's the best fighter Usman's ever fought. I'd say that's definitely Colby. But as a striker, he definitely is the cleanest one he's ever fought. And so, maybe he can knock him out. Definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Luke, how about you?
So I had a play on Usman as well in the original iteration against Burns. This is, I guess, one of those situations where I think it's just really not a great matchup for Jorge Masvidal. And if this line continues to go down, where we've kind of seen a few posts or whatnot on Twitter saying, all this money's coming in on Jorge Masvidal. So I'm not going to lie, man, if this gets down to around like minus 200 or right around that range, I'm probably going to fire a pretty big bet as well. I guess I kind of disagree. I actually think the Burns matchup was actually a little bit more difficult than the Masvidal matchup, solely based on the jiu-jitsu acumen of Gilbert Burns. Whereas, people want to touch on in terms of Masvidal that, the guy has great submission defense, and that's absolutely 100% warranted. But I guess my take on it from a betting perspective is even with Damian Maia on your back, if you want to give the guy credit, he didn't get stubbed by Damian Maia, even though the dude got backpacked for like 5+ minutes. It's like, okay, but at the end of the day, dude, bro, you're losing that round, like, clearly. So I guess my take on it is like, okay, even if he is able to, like, not saying that Usman's some big submission threat here, but like people are, okay, well, even if Masvidal gets taken down, I mean, Usman's still winning in top time. So like and then once again, even if this fight is at space, definitely that gives Jorge the best chance to win this fight. But I think Usman's boxing has also improved dramatically over time. Now, granted, as C touched on, if Usman goes out here and tries to test his boxing with Jorge Masvidal for 25 minutes, we could see it play out a lot closer than odds indicate. But I don't think there's anything that suggests that in the tape that that's what he's going to do. I think he's been pretty consistent. I know he didn't do that against Colby Covington, but once again, Colby Covington is also a really solid wrestler too, who he probably thought he had a better boxing advantage over. I think he's going to be smart here. He's going to realize he probably does not have a significant boxing advantage over Jorge Masvidal, so I'm expecting him to come grappling heavy here, and I'm expecting him to win 49-46 on the cards.
Lags, how about you?
I mean, not much else to add here. I mean, I think this is more of a fan favorite matchup than from a betting perspective, I guess, if you're on the Usman side. And I think that if you guys got in on that Usman early decision line at plus 200, I think that's good. But I think now it's around like plus 140 now. So I think I would stay away at the current number. I know somebody touched on it. The main event to go the distance at plus 135. I like that play a lot. But I mean, I don't know. I think it's just similar to what Luke said. I think it's a bad matchup for Jorge, but I think he can be competitive early. But I ultimately see Usman winning a unanimous decision here.
Yeah. So that is what we got for you guys tonight. We're going to be doing 2 podcasts next week. Probably will not have a recap given the insane schedule. Big thanks to Joe for coming on the show again and doing it with us. So that'll be it for this week. Let's enjoy UFC 251, guys, and good luck. Bye, guys.
Peace.
Peace out.
Thanks, Joe.
Got it, guys.